Hello, and welcome to HORRORific Chats. In this segment, we talk to independent creators to discuss their inspirations, motivations, and journey into horror. Tonight, we're joined by Jonathan Hicks, a writer and creator of TTRPG games and owner of Farsight Games. He is responsible for publications such as Fireteam, Deep Space, and his latest endeavour, Pressure. Good evening, Jonathan, and welcome. How are you, man?
No, absolutely fantastic. And cheers for having me on, Colin. I really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. If you just bear with me, for some reason, Twitch has decided to break on me.
Hooray for Twitch.
Yay, go ahead.
And we were literally just talking about, we'll be fine.
No, it always happens when you go, where's the fun and things going right all the time?
That's half the entertainment.
Yeah, flip's sake. Yeah, you don't want shiny, polished stuff. You want to do that, go to the mainstream TV and watch all them boring people. They're all plastic. I can't be annoyed with that. So, oh, chat's filling up already. I was going to say as well before we live, so I was hitting miss in the chat. Either nobody turns up or everybody turns up. So, evening, Oliver, Angela, Brotherhood of the Dice.
Good evening,
Good
all.
to have you on board.
Bless them.
Yeah, I was just talking about that. Twitch decided that the title is invalid for some reason.
That's a shame.
Weird. Yeah, I could sit here and hold on, go live. Let's see if it works now.
On Twitch.
You're live on Twitch. Okay, hello, Twitch.
Say, take my second name out of it, because apparently last week when I was trying to do it on Twitch, it wouldn't take the title because of my second name. Don't ask me why. Just take it out. I'm obviously cursed.
No, see these algorithms, and it's a problem in the horror genre is finding in particular. It's something to talk about a lot. Because there's no context, so they're using bots to pick up naughty words.
Yeah.
And it's just an algorithm. And if you put a word like killer,
yeah,
and even if it's in context, they're saying, "Oh, you're talking about nasty evil stuff. We must ban you." And you're like, "Really?"
Yeah, honestly.
I got to the point with Facebook in particular, where the messages I send them when I try to ban stuff is just, "You bunch of idiots!" And then I take the ban off. So I sent him the snottiest message you can imagine.
Oh, mate, I'm going to test that now.
Yeah, honestly, they're absolute muppets that don't have a clue.
Like I say, it's the algorithm. It's literally just focusing on certain things. Like I say, if it's not in context, it's not going to understand it. So,
and the algorithms are written by Americans who don't understand context if you put them in the arse with it. So, that's the world we live in. And I have a lot of American friends, and I
know exactly what the problem.
There's just a certain little group, and they just don't get the world.
Oh, well.
And they don't get banter, and they don't get that not everything's an attack.
Yeah.
And especially British culture, we rip the bag out of each other.
Oh, mate, we wouldn't be British if we didn't.
Yeah, and it's all done with love, especially during role-playing games. If anyone watches any sort of role-playing game being played, there's maybe about 20% gameplay, and the rest is just everyone abusing each other.
That's the only reason why I tune in, let's face it.
There's times we just start riffing about movies, and then it's about 20 minutes in. Oh, I suppose we better play the game.
Oh, there's a game?
Oh, yeah, that's happens. Talking of which, that's your whole thing. You are... for the audience who may not be familiar, explain to everybody what a TTRPG is.
The easiest way to explain it, and it's probably going to upset a lot of people, is just type the word Dungeons and Dragons into your search engine, and that'll explain to you what a role-playing game is. It's quite, yeah, indeed. That is the £500 gorilla. That is people's entry into the hobby. And it's not a bad thing because it's getting the attention. And I mean, recently they put Dungeons and Dragons on postage stamps. You know, that's how far the hobby's come. Well, that's how far Dungeons and Dragons has come.
Mm-hmm.
But it's probably the best way to be introduced to the hobby because there's loads of people out there who want to play it. There's loads of games on the go. There's loads of streams, so you can see different kinds of play. I don't play Dungeons and Dragons anymore. I've still got some of my old rule books because I started playing it about 1984. Books, with the Larry Elmore cover.
Mm-hmm.
The basic set, absolutely loved it. I mean, it's not the greatest system in the world, but it's certainly good for.
No system is. No, if you're looking for perfection, you're never going to get it.
Never going to get it. You're never going to get exactly what you want unless you play one of my games, of course. But no, it's basically role playing is a bunch of people. There's different kinds of role playing, and it will vary from group to group. But the basics is role playing is people sitting around a table One person will tell everybody else what they see, hear, smell, and what's basically going on around them in the environment. Then the other players react to that and tell the games master or dungeon master or whatever, or referee or what have you, what it is they want to do, and then they decide whether they're successful or not. And if the outcome of an action is in doubt, you roll dice, and the results of the dice will tell you if you're successful or not. That's probably a really hacked up way of explaining it. It's probably the simplest way I can. But I see it as kind of a creative story. It's like a storytelling engine. So as the games master will create the situations, but the people around the table will have their inputs by explaining their actions, and together you all create a story. So you create a narrative, and that's what I get out of it. I like that spontaneous creation, not just from myself, because a lot of games masters play games on the seat of their pants, but from the people around the table as well. Their input is just as important as the GM's input. That's role playing in a nutshell.
Yeah, cool. It is a unique hobby. I
It
think
is.
a lot of people looking from the outside can't get their heads around it.
No, I agree. Especially in the 80s, when we were growing up, 80s and 90s, it's so difficult to explain what a role playing game is, and it's one of those ones you have to sit and experience. It's difficult to explain it.
You have to just dive in.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot easier now because people are on the internet running actual plays, and just about every single game in existence has got an actual play somewhere on the internet. So it's easier, if you're interested in gaming in general. And of course, there's lots of clubs popping up as well. There's clubs everywhere. So yeah, it's probably, and again with the advent of online gaming, so people going to places like Roll20 and Foundry, it's probably never been a better time for people to get into role-playing games. Never been an easier time for people to get into role-playing games.
Yeah, I'm thinking there's like a new resurgence. It's just built up, and there's a passion and a new love for it. And one thing about and something I was going to ask you when we start talking about your development process is about the VTTs and do you factor that in? But that actually removes a lot of the mechanics. When you build it into the VTT, all you have to do is click a button that rolls the dice. You're not having to worry about charts and tables and doing your modifiers, because a lot of it's built in now. So the accessibility now is fantastic. So you can come in as a complete novice. Absolutely.
It makes life easy. Like I say, the one-click aspect of a lot of the game engines on the VTTs makes gaming so much easier. There was a game that I used to play in the late 80s, early 90s called Rollmaster. It's probably one of the most complicated games I've ever played. It's a percentage game, and it took me 6 hours to create a character. That's how complicated the game is. So, and then there's loads of charts and tables, and the charts and tables reflect what weapon you have, how good you are with it, how you're using it, whether you're stabbing or swinging it. You're rolling on different charts, and combat used to take forever. But nowadays, click of the button tells you everything you need to know in one click. That's great. Tabletop gaming has changed radically over the last 10 years, I think.
So a lot of people in the role-playing world, they naturally gravitate to either player or games master, and there's obviously a few people that are both. I think you started out as a player, like most folks.
I remember it clearly as well. It was Room 1A at Leatherstowe Comprehensive School in 1984 at the after-school Dungeons and Dragons Club, and I played a thief called Jam Donut. Don't ask me why I named him that. It's just I was like 13 years old, stupid. But yeah, it's. I think with role-playing games, getting into them initially when you're young is probably the best time to do it, because that's when your imagination's the most fertile. So it'd be perfect for me because my mind was all over the place as a kid. I was in love with Lord of the Rings, Star Wars. My mind was just a massive rack of imagination. So role-playing games was a perfect outlet.
Yeah, and people don't understand it as actually a creative outlet. It's a lot of people today, especially with more access to creativity and the ability to create than ever. But everyone again falls in that trap of, if you're not an artist or if you're not making it as a business, then you're not creating, and it's therefore not useful in your life. But stepping away from the world for a couple of hours, getting away from the daily grind and going somewhere completely different is amazing for your mental health, for your robustness, and getting out of the frustration. We'll all have jobs and
Yeah.
tasks that we do in life that don't inspire us.
Yeah.
So just getting that time away to just do something completely different and not relying on an external source, i.e. a device,
Yeah.
to entertain you. You actually...
And as well, gaming is so unpredictable. Role-playing games, tabletop role-playing games are so unpredictable as well. So you're not just being stimulated creatively, you're being stimulated sort of continuously. So you're not getting hit with one dopamine hit throughout the entire evening. You're getting it constantly because things are changing and shifting up. No, I think it's a fantastic way of spending time.
Yeah. When did you first start? Because it all seems to be a transition from player to GM.
Mm.
When did you decide, oh, I want to run a game, or was it just happenstance? And then talk to us about that sort of journey, because it's an interesting one. It's a lot of things people find intimidating.
It is intimidating. It was intimidating the first time. I didn't know what I was doing, and because we were playing Dungeons and Dragons, and we collected the miniatures as well. We used to buy loads of Rattle Partha stuff, and Games Workshop as well when they were pumping their miniatures out for the first time. And we used to.
I didn't forget GW used to do other systems and not just Warhammer.
Absolutely. I mean, they did loads of stuff. They were responsible for RuneQuest and Star Trek in this country. They brought that over. They're doing all their own games. I mean, they did Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, but they were doing stuff like they had licenses like Judge Dredd and what have you. You know what I mean? So they were having a great time with it. But we treated it more of a miniatures game. So you were literally going through the dungeons, moving the squares, shooting stuff in the face, taking the stuff, and we really were playing to win. When we were playing this for the first couple of years I was doing it, you wanted to win the game. And the winning the game was killing all the monsters and leaving with the treasure. And if you were
go in the dungeon, kill the monster, take the treasure, rinse and repeat.
It's basically 1980s murder hobos, no problem at all. Whereas, unfortunately, that also reflected in the dungeon masters that we played with as well. As far as they were concerned, it was their job to kill the players. And they would do whatever they could to do that. So after a little while, the games to me were still enjoyable because I was getting to hang out with my friends and having a little bit of fun. And also, as well, something from the 1980s when people used to say about sad, lonely role players. Yet role playing is probably one of the most social games that you can actually play. Because you have to play with friends. You have to find game. You have to go out and find people to play with of a like mind. I decided that I wanted to GM, and now I'm pretty much a forever GM. Around about 87. It was 87 when the Star Wars role-playing game came out for the first time for West End Games.
Oh God, I played that once. And...
Oh no, I loved it. I mean, that was our campaign game for more than a decade. And because luckily a lot of my friends were already massive Star Wars fans. Shout out to Mark Newbold at panthertracks.com. And it was a fantastic game. But Greg Kostikian, who I had the pleasure of interviewing a few years ago, really nice guy, had written this game in a very casual, chatty manner, and he'd also put in there some of the best Games Master advice I've ever read, and I still adhere to a lot of his advice today, and that's what set me on the path to be a constant Games Master. Creatively, because I was writing and drawing as well, so I wanted to do a different version of that on the tabletop, so I could be creative on the tabletop and spontaneous. And I also like telling stories. And I'm also a bit of an attention seeker. So I want people to look at me, whilst I'm chatting away and telling them what's happening. So there's a little bit of narcissism in every single Games Master. I can guarantee that. But yeah, and that's what set me on my path. So I did play a lot, but I'm probably 90% Games Master and 10% player. I do miss playing. I do enjoy playing. But when I'm at the table, I just want to be running the game.
It's hard to switch gears when you get into that sort of mode. Yeah, because you're just always in the back seat. It's like me. I find it difficult sometimes being a guest because I'm used to doing all the bells and whistles in the background and getting everything set up. While it's refreshing just to turn up and have someone else do the work, it's like, I'm not sure what I'm meant to be doing. Sort of thing.
I used to be really bad, especially in the 90s as a Games Master, and I had to teach myself not to do it. But I was sat at the table playing somebody else's game, and constantly at the back of my head, I was going, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have created it that way. I wouldn't have written that. I wouldn't have played it like that. You know what I mean? I'm mentally, silently criticising the Games Master that's running their game. Yeah. Totally unfair. And it took me a long time to get out of that sort of habit.
But is that not a maturity thing as well? When you're younger, you're passionate, you're hormone driven, all that stuff's going on. And You're learning social skills.
Mate, this was the mid-90s. I was in my mid-20s when there was a
still, you don't really, let's be honest, but don't really become fully formed until we're like about 30.
No, probably. And I think a lot of it as well, in some games that I was playing in, I think I was jealous because they were running things, and I was thinking I wouldn't have done it that way. And then 5 minutes later, what they were doing was actually better, and I was really enjoying myself. And people were going, "Oh, this is fantastic," and a little bit of jealousy, like little green-eyed monster popped up, and I'm thinking, "Yeah, what about my games?" So, but that's how you learn. You have to. It's the experience. It's everything. I mean, even now, everything that I do in gaming is a learning curve.
Yeah, one thing I've learned, especially in this whole YouTube game and everything else, someone else's success doesn't detract from you, and the worst thing you can do is to sit there and go, "Oh, they do this, and oh, they've got more subscribers, oh, they've got more views," and God, that's just poison yourself.
Absolutely,
that'll come through in your game if you're creating anything.
Yeah,
if that's your mindset, that will come through. Back to Star Wars.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
The one game I played, the GM was that guy. Yeah. And he was the same when he was the player, he was the same when he was GM, he was that guy. And it was just horrendous. And I just remember I had a rocket launcher thing and I shot an Imperial tank, and of course the rolls went really well, so it meant it blew it up. But the piece of information was on that tank, and then that was it. The game was over because I blew up the tank with that piece of information. And he's like, "Ha, you lost the game." And I just went,
"That's what I'm talking about. It's Game Master's treating it like a board game, and they're against you, and that's just not." To me, I mean, there's certain games that are set up like that, and they can be fun.
Well, Dungeons and Dragons is that's the transition I've always said between a tabletop war game and a TTRPG. It's that first slide to that direction.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, Dungeons and Dragons is from what's the game? Chainmail. So originally it was just it was based on wargaming rules. I think Dungeons and Dragons got into a better place around about 3rd edition. So I fell out of love with 2nd edition because it got a little bit bloated.
I played Ravenloft about a month and a half ago there, and it was funny actually watching 5e players. Not wrapping their head around you're not a superhero anymore. And
no, I mean that's one of the things I actually quite like about 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, because it's one of my favourite editions. I think it's really well done, but I like it because it's modular. So if I don't like the talents and if I don't like the skills, I'll literally just put them to one side and just play it basic. You know what I mean? Forget your death saves, just crack on with the game. And that's what I quite like about it. You can tear chunks out of it and leave it. Whereas 4th edition, everything was entwined in those rules. And it wasn't like a miniatures game because it was competing with Warcraft at the time. So it was like a miniatures game. It was more miniatures based and sort of action based. Whereas I think D&D, if you can take chunks out of it, the new D&D 5th edition, it's a little bit more, you can play it a little bit more freeform, and that's how I played it. But just like in my experience, Dungeons and Dragons is good for Dungeons and Dragons. The system is good for Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, it's its own thing.
I find it difficult to use anything else.
Yeah, and I've found with RPGs, there's Dungeons and Dragons, and then there's everything else.
Yeah,
and I'm on the, obviously I play that, but I'm on the everything else side of.
Yeah,
there's such a plethora of games and systems, and just. You go down so many worlds where I think if you principally just in one system, and I suppose it's a thing. If you just stay with one system, then you're limiting yourself, and you're not betraying one system by trying something else. And I don't get that mentality.
I think a lot of people it's like a comfort zone because, like I say, for 10 years I just played Star Wars D6 system. I even bypassed 2nd edition Star Wars and even the 3rd edition expanded and revised editions. So I was that was my comfort game. That's pretty much all I played. I was playing other things, but it was like little one-shots or small campaigns. And I kind of get that with Dungeons and Dragons because when I first started playing in '84, when the other role-playing games came out, because we had things like Traveller then as well, and then Star Wars came out, which was my big thing because I was a massive Star Wars fan. It was difficult for me to transition to those new game systems because I was so used to rolling D20s. So people want to, and like we were saying earlier, a lot of people don't have. They're working now. They've got day jobs. They don't have time. They don't want to be messing about learning new systems. And I 100% get that. But it is a massive shame that Dungeons and Dragons dominate so much of the landscape that you cannot see what's behind it because it literally is eclipsing everything else.
Yeah, well, it's the same as DW
a lot of Dungeons and Dragons players, if they were exposed to these different games, which may be a lot more focused on what they want out of a role-playing game, I think they'll have a lot more fun with it.
And it doesn't mean they've betrayed. You can always go back to your system.
Absolutely.
When did you decide then? Because there's one thing becoming a games master, and that's a step in itself, and you can just absolutely have a fulfilled life doing homebrew games, taking scenarios, tweaking them, making your experience. You basically provide the experience, and that.
Yeah.
Anyone that does it, like Brother Who the Dice is on, Dialov, he's an amazing games master. And that's what he enjoys doing, and it comes through in the games, because when somebody is passionate and they're all about creating the experience, you have a good time. But you then decide to formalize and create your own games. When was the first time that happened? And what was the sort of thought process of taking that then step of, okay, this is my first, I'm creating a game of my own and putting it out there? What was that sort of journey like? And which game was it?
I think every gamer, whether they're a games master or just a player, or not just a player, whether they're a games master or a player, tinker with their own game ideas. Even if it's just homebrewing for the system that they're playing. I mean, D&D has got so much homebrewing. I did loads of homebrewing for D&D. Mm-hmm. Even if it's just homebrewing for the game that they're playing, or whether they're trying to do something unique. Everybody tinkers. Everybody tinkles.
Everybody tinkles as well.
sorry, rest of all, that's a British euphemism, which I will be giggling about later. And everybody tinkers with the systems and their own design ideas, and then even tries them out. I mean, I know people who have designed their own games, have not done anything with them, but have been running their own games with their own systems. I've done entire campaigns for 2 or 3 years on the trot. I think I first thought about doing a proper game sort of early 2000s, sort of 2004, 2005. Mm-hmm. And the internet was in its infancy still. Everybody was just starting to reach the sort of 1 megabyte.
God, that was the dial-up AOL era, and
and I was
you downloading an image and was like
little bit by bit, yeah. Like the guy out of The Simpsons trying to get a picture of Janeway. Brazia, the final frontier.
And the porn bots just attacked your computer. It was the Wild West.
Not mine. So I was tinkering around then. I played with something called which are called the sketch system, and it was a little bit like what I'm doing now. It was a single D6. It was a bunch of stats, and you just played around with it. And that was a bit of fun. And then in about 2008, 2009, my playing and my games mastering had kind of leveled off, and I wasn't really gaming. I hadn't really won a proper game for about 2 years. So I wasn't at any tables. I wasn't really designing anything. And I had this bundle of energy inside me thinking, I want a game, what do I do? So I thought, well, why don't I just write one and have a go at that? So I wrote the first draft of my first game, Those Dark Places, in about 2008, 2009. Mm-hmm. It was vastly different from what the game that was actually released by Osprey Games. And it was just straight up science fiction horror. It was just Alien, The Thing, monsters, coming out. The Thing. I think I've just literally finished playing Dead Space on the PlayStation 3, which is one of my favourite franchises of all time. I think Dead Space is absolutely fantastic. Mm-hmm. Maybe not so much Dead Space 3, but absolutely brilliant. And then the remake is absolutely astounding. And I was basically basing it on that. So, bit of Dead Space, bit of horror, bit of shooting up, blah, blah, blah. And I put it out for public playtesting on a website called, oh my Lord, 1,000 months.
The process back then would have been completely different than now.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've got Drive Through RPG, you've got, channels, but back in 2008,
they had nothing. There was stuff out there, but I didn't have access to it. I didn't know how to use it. I didn't intend to do anything with it. At the moment, I was literally just playing around with it. And because I didn't have players of my own who could help me out, I put it on the internet for people to look at. And the feedback was kind of lukewarm. People going, yeah, it's all right. So you kind of get that kind of feedback. And you sort of, well, I won't bother then. So I didn't put it on the back burner. Little did I know that I'd left it on the internet for people to download. And there's an interesting story, which I'll come back to about that later. And then I didn't really bother with it. And then I was running a website called Farsight Blogger, which has now become Farsight Games. Mm-hmm. And
that's your own company,
It's nothing serious. It's just a small label so that I can just release my own, I have these streams of consciousness as far as games are concerned. So I'm literally just writing them down, formatting them, and releasing them. So I was running Farsight Blogger. Farsight Blogger was basically just me chatting shit about stuff, just about what I like, films, movies, books, you know what I mean? Taking the mickey a little bit. And then I got an interview with somebody. And then over the next 2 or 3 years, I was interviewing very important people in the role-playing industry and sent loads of stuff for review as well. So I was having a great time. And then I started to make contacts and, you talk to people in the industry. And over about 4 or 5 years, I made a lot of, I wouldn't say I made a lot of contacts, spoke to a lot of people and got quite a lot of insight as to how the industry works, what to do, creative processes, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it was really, really good. And then I returned back to games design in about 2016, 2017. Again, because I didn't have any players, and I had an opportunity, so I went for it.
Excellent. How important is it? Because I talk to obviously a lot of independent creators, and the ones that do well are the ones that do the research and learn about the industry. A lot of people sort of fire and hope that it'll just magically land, and they don't bother. All they do is they'll do the post, buy my thing, and they just fall by the wayside, and then they get angry and frustrated because they've no, they wonder why they've no engagement. But anyone I've spoken to that has done well has actually spent the time making the connections and learning how things work and then apply it to themselves. Where do people start?
Passion. Yeah, that's it. That's what you need is passion. If you get passionate about your subject, about the game that you're writing, and you can put that passion onto the page and have other people realize how passionate you are about it, that's the first draw. If you are literally going to sit down and write a game with the intention of saying, I can write this, it'll be really neat, I'll get some nice artwork, and we'll make loads of money, you're almost dooming yourself to failure, because if you're not emotionally connected or if you're not passionate about the project that you're writing, then you're writing it for all the wrong reasons. And I hate to use the cliche, and I do apologize. When I first started writing role-playing games, I was writing them for myself. And then when people started to enjoy them, that was just a bonus. And then when people started to want to pay for them, that was the double bonus. You know what I mean? So it wasn't my intention to sell them. It's my intention just to have a little bit of fun and give them away. And I still give games away, even now, because I just enjoy writing them and messing about. But yeah, if you've got any intention to get into the gaming industry, and it is easy to get into, you can literally write anything and put it on Drive-Thru RPG or itch.io, or there's plenty of places where you can sell it.
But there's one difference between doing that, and that's what I'm saying about the difference between anybody can do that, but the difference between that and being successful is that passion and wanting to do it, not just, I need to make money, I want to be blah, blah, blah.
If you're in it for the fame and fortune, you're in it for completely the wrong reasons. I can guarantee that. There is no fame and there's definitely no fortune.
So in terms of your mechanics then, do you have the same mechanic throughout your game? As it can people just go, oh, this is a Jonathan game, this is this is the Farsight game? Or have you messed about with different sort of dice rolls and tables in the background and to give each game a different flavor? Or have you decided the mechanics are the mechanics and the storytelling is what's going to make each game its own? But what kind of
the way I design games is that I want gaming groups and games masters to take that game and make it their own. I don't want to restrict anybody as what they can and can't do with that game. See, as soon as I've made that game and I've put it out into the wild, it's not my game anymore. Once you've bought that book or you've got hold of that system, that's your game to play with, to do what you want. All I can do is give support to that. But as far as I'm concerned, every table is different. Every table plays for different reasons. They play different ways. I've got no control over that. All I can do is give the framework. There isn't anything really standard about my games, other than the fact that a lot of them are, well, I say a lot of them, all of them are rules light. I've kind of shied away now from more punchy games because I'd rather tell a story and then have those rules arbitrate what happens, instead of having the rules dictate what's happening on the table, which I do find with quite a few games. I'm not into charts and tables. I want people to be able to make a dice roll, look at the result, and then know what the result is, and then just move on. Because I like a little bit of tension and adventure in my games, and there's nothing that grinds a game to a halt more than, especially in combat, like you've had a great game, you've built up this tension, everybody's on the edge of their seats, and then suddenly you're spending 20 minutes waiting for your turn in the combats. You know what I mean? It sucks the life out of it. I've moved more towards rules light, but no, there's a definitive system for those like Places and Pressure. And then I've done a separate one with a D12, which is the best dice in the world, for my deep space games, and then I mess around with other systems just for the fun of it.
Oh, cool. That was the thing. We're going to keep going back to the D&D thing, but our party wanted to just jump on someone, and there was no mechanics to do it. And it became a thing of, oh no, you must wait your turn. And I was like, oh come on, like how can you not do that? We just want to put the dog pile on this person, hold them down, and drag them away.
Yeah.
And then it's like there's no way unless they're super, strength that they're going to be able to resist that. No, have to take your turn. You can add one bone, and it just became, the minute you go off script with some games.
Dungeons and Dragons has always been an ongoing joke. I remember the adverts for D&D 4th edition. They were going through the years as editions of Dungeons and Dragons. It was always the grappling rules, and in the end they would just go, "Oh, I'll just roll to hit him with my sword." You know what I mean? So grappling rules are always a nightmare. But yeah, that's why I've gone back to rules light, because you shouldn't have to. There's nothing worse than a games master or dungeon master going, "Sorry, you can't do that." That winds me up as a player. If just being told bluntly you can't do that because it's not covered in the rules, that would just wind me up.
Is that on the GM?
It is very much so. But I've played with lots of GMs back in the day, especially where they will play the game rules as written. If you deviate from those rules, then you're doing it wrong. But playing it like the rules of a board game.
Is that a confidence thing? Or just a mindset thing?
I think it is. It may be a confidence thing. I think also as well. I think again we come back to the term comfort zone. Some games masters don't like stepping outside of the rules as written because it becomes a little bit uncomfortable, and then they feel that the players may be thinking, well, it's not written in the books, so you just make it up as it goes along, and that may suck a little bit of the sort of I can't think of the word. Is it verisimilitude? I can't think of the word. The sort of the immersion out of it. If you think that things are made up on the fly, and you're
sort of stepping out. There's a particular world built.
Yeah.
And if you step too far away, it doesn't become that world anymore, and you're stepping into something else.
Or the world. If you step too far out of it, people will lose interest. Then that's why I've gone rules light. I want that interpretation. That's one of the reasons why I like old school Dungeons and Dragons, especially the basic versions, because you go back to that. The power's back into the games master's hands. And that's one of the reasons why I quite like Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition as well, because even though there's rules for everything and it's getting a bit more bloated now, back when it came out, I felt like a bit more power being put back into my hands. So I could be a little bit more sort of carefree, well, not carefree, but I could make on-the-spot judgments and then just move on with the game.
You don't have to consult 20 charts and grind to a halt.
And that's why I'm in favour of rules like games now. That's why I write them, because I want the games master to say, well, okay, what's happening? Okay, make your dice roll. Okay, score that. Blah, blah, blah. That's the decision I've made. Let's move on. So there's no messing about, you know what I mean? And people know what to expect.
So in the world of VTT now, because this is, it's still a fairly new phenomenon.
Yeah.
And it's still developing, but it's really, people are now getting on board. And I would actually, like you mentioned, PlayStation, or like traditional games are really falling by the wayside because they're coming out, they're incomplete. You have to have 100 updates and mods, and they're starting to go into the microtransactions, even if you buy a physical disc. And
that's what killed Dead Space.
Yeah, and that's people are just disgusted, I think, with gaming, and then you're being called names as well. If you don't like this game, you're a blah 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 blah, and you're like, really? For not liking a game? And you're like, and that's how you're going to win me over? I don't think so. But we're seeing the advent of VTT now, and we're almost getting a hybrid between a role-playing game, and it's almost becoming video game-esque. You can really go crazy with it. But is that something you have to take on board now when you're writing a game? Do you now have to consider the VTT applications? Because I've spoken to some other folks, and they're like, oh, no, we don't want to do that. And then they're now potentially losing out on an entire customer base. Like my locale physically now, I can't play games physically because there's nobody around the area. It's a 2-hour minimum, 2-hour journey to go find a game. People are physically playing games, so I rely online.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the online space, I wouldn't be playing. But is it important now that you take VTT into consideration when you're designing the game? Is that now an absolute must? Or can you still get away with it? Or are we still figuring it out?
No, I understand. I think it's probably important if you're creating a game with a bit more crunch, because you're going to want to make that game accessible. When you sat around a table with a game with crunch, it's a lot easier. You've got the books in front of you. You can reference, no problem at all. It makes that life a bit more easy. But on VTT, it can be a bit more difficult. And also, it depends on how the game is supported on VTT as well. And of course, Dungeons and Dragons and games like that have got lots of support because their game system's integrated into that.
Well, D&D Beyond, that's entirely its own thing, but
yeah, absolutely,
it only covers 5th edition.
Yeah.
So everyone's having to go back to Roll20 or Foundry for
but
other.
I don't think about it when I'm designing games because my games are I keep my games simple. So in both, like take for instance, those Dark Places and Pressure. All they use is a single D6. So if you want to make a dice roll, you don't have to click on loads of things with modifiers. When we were doing the game last Saturday, you literally just typing into the chat what the roll 1d6 plus whatever your modifiers are. It comes up on the screen. So simple, really, really simple. So I think the simpler the game, the easier it is to use on VTT. And I think that was one of the appeals of those Dark Places when it first came out. And you'll find lots of VTT games on YouTube of those Dark Places, because it's a dead simple game. You don't have to worry about setting up the system on Foundry or Roll20 or whatever it is that you're using. You don't have to. You can even. We were doing it on Discord. We're using the dice roller on Discord, so you don't have to worry about all that sort of stuff. You literally just turn up and play, and that was attractive about it. So no, when I'm designing games, and because I'm an old fart as well, I'm 52 years old now. So I spent 30 years sitting around the table. To me, last 5 years, VTT is quite new. And enjoyable.
It's still a new, it's still a new phenomenon, and like I said, people are still figuring out how to do it. But it's something that can't be disregarded because it's such a way now that people, like I said, people now find other players online where maybe they can't find something locally.
No, absolutely. I think VTT is an absolute godsend, especially during COVID. I think VTT is an absolute godsend. It's made gaming. I mean, this is what we were saying at the beginning. Especially where D&D 5th edition is concerned, it's made gaming so accessible and it's easy to find groups, and you don't have to even leave your living room. It's I think it's been probably one of the best things that's happened to tabletop role playing in the past 10-15 years, because it really has created this huge community globally of gamers, and that can only be a good thing.
As long as it doesn't go mainstream. That's my concern.
It's already gone mainstream.
Something goes mainstream.
Yeah, it's already gone mainstream. Critical Role's already proven that. I mean, a few years ago, the idea of a group of people running a Dungeons and Dragons game in a stadium with 15,000 people watching and online was just absolutely ridiculous. I would never imagine that. It's like going back to the 1980s and saying, "Oh, you're enjoying Pac-Man? Well, in 20 years, they're going to have people going to have live gaming groups with international competitions. What are you talking about? It's a computer game." And I think it's already gone mainstream. I mean, they've got Vox Machina, the cartoon. We've got the Dungeons and Dragons film, which I actually really enjoyed because it was just a lot of fun. And it didn't take itself seriously, which was just perfect to me. That was Dungeons and Dragons game, so I've never taken it seriously. And it was it's already gone mainstream. It's how long it stays there in the sort of the public mind that's different. Unlike, it's never going to be like Marvel or Star Wars. Or
let's never have that, because once it becomes the fast food chain, it's over.
Well, it's over for the big guys, because then it'll just be pumping out content, and nobody wants content. People want games. So,
because that is one thing I'd taken a break for about 15-20 years of role playing, because believe it or not, I started out with Vampire. That's my. How I come in.
The Vampire the Masquerade, the original book with the rose on the cover, that's fantastic. 91, that was really.
But as you know, the players that it attracts.
I can tell you some stories.
Oh yeah, everyone does. The minute you mention Vampire, everyone has that far
everybody
away.
Has that. They have that incident and they have that guy. Yeah.
Fun enough, the same guy that ran Star Wars was part of that too. So God, I had to ban White Wolf Games at one point from a club because people were like throwing hissy fits.
Oh man,
and
you're
just like, what is this?
But it was new, and people, and it kind of proved a point that I had years before, whereas you could get emotionally involved with games, because I was running. My first proper experience with role-playing games where I got emotionally involved was a game called Middle-earth Roleplay by Iron Crown Enterprises.
Oh yeah, God,
absolutely loved it, and because I was so involved, and I loved Lord of the Rings and Middle Earth so much because I grew up with it since I was like 9 years old, and I loved it so much, and I was emotionally involved with it. So I fully understand why people got so emotionally involved with Vampire. And of course, at the time as well, Anne Rice's book had come out, and you know, vampires was a massive resurgence of that kind of darkness.
Yeah, because everyone was an Anne, right? You know, a Lestat wannabe, and
yeah, yeah.
It was just that conversation. It was just okay, right?
See, when I played it, I picked up, I think, is it Hunter that they made? And you were basically playing a person hunting these creatures down. Because unfortunately,
that came on later, didn't it? That wasn't for.
It came out a long time later. Yeah.
That was well down the road.
Games like that when the game originally came out, because my argument was, if I'm lower on the food chain than these creatures in the darkness, I'm going to want to survive, so I'm going to get them first. It didn't go down very well in the gaming group, but yeah, Vampire proved a massive point, and that is just how emotionally involved people could get with role-playing games. In my experience, I did feel that some people needed to rein that in a little bit.
That's where the stereotype comes in, and that's where the bad rep.
And that's the bad rep. I played like 99% of my games that I played with in the World of Darkness were fantastic, but that 1% really stands out. It still stands out in my mind now. But the 90s was a fantastic time for role-playing games. Some of the innovation, the new games that were coming out, and different ways of playing. No, absolutely fantastic.
That was actually when I was most social. When I was, involved with gaming, and back to the old stereotype, a bunch of sad, lonely people.
Yeah.
How can you be sad and lonely when you're a group of 6?
This is what I was saying. Yeah.
And then, of course, you make friends, and then you're going out to the pub together, and you're having a laugh, and you have an energy.
Yeah.
Because
and you have a connection, and it's almost like your Masons. You've got this nudge, wink, wink. We know what we're talking about.
Everyone's making in jokes, and
absolutely, and that's what's great, because then you feel like a proper little community. But now, because of VTT and the internet, that community's gone worldwide now. Everybody's involved.
We're doing it like us and the people that are in the chat. Now we are talking about other games or ones we've watched, and we've got even in when I get involved with these guys about a year, not even a year. Like I've got back into the other game because I started playing with my buddy. He has a Dragonlance channel, and that's he sort of, oh, you used to role play. Do you fancy helping me out? I need a player. Okay, no bother. And then I went back down the rabbit hole again. But I joined Brotherhood of the Dice, their Wednesday group, and I haven't looked back, if that makes sense, and now we've got this stage where we've played so many games together. There are nudge, nudge, wink, wink, and we're having conversations, and it's all about stuff that happened in the game, and it's usually when something goes wrong.
Yeah.
I always say embrace the dice, embrace the madness, because if everything just goes sterile and correct and by plan, you're going to be bored.
It is, and it's boring. And I remember talking about role-playing stories. I remember the failures more than I remember the successes, unless that success was like really dramatically appropriate and crucial. But I remember having this conversation not long ago in role-playing games. I remember the feelings that I had during those sessions. I don't remember the dice rolls. I don't remember what I rolled. I'm not bothered about the numbers on the dice, but I remember the feelings that I had, how I felt about it. Like those like I said earlier, like the dopamine hit that I got, or that's kind of sense of pride, or that sense of satisfaction that I got from, or even that sense of dread and that sense of failure. Those are the moments that I remember from my role-playing sessions from 35, 40 years ago. I remember the first thing I killed in Dungeons and Dragons with Jam Donut. We were around a pool, and I think it was a healing pool, and we were attacked by the undead. And I hit a skeleton with an axe, and it fell down dead. That was the first thing I killed. And that moment, I traded 3 or 4 blows with it, thinking, "Am I going to die?" And then killed it. And it was the last thing to die in the fight. And that moment is seared into my brain, with everybody around the table going, "Yes, well done, brilliant." You know what I mean? Those are the moments that I remember. You can make as many dice rolls as you want. You can have as many fantastic stats on the character sheet as you want. That's not what you're going to remember. You're going to remember your character's name, you're going to remember the game, and you're going to remember how you felt about it.
Yeah. Funny enough, I don't remember, but like from the vampire days, I always played either Ventru or an Asimite.
Yeah.
Because I was a 40k player, and I was having that transition between roll dice, skill things, and I come into role playing games of smash,
roll as many dice as possible.
So that took me a minute to get out of that zone. And it wasn't the years later that I looked back and went, "Oh, right, I might have been a bit silly." And then I understand why some people might have got a bit frustrated with me, because I was like, just...
Yeah, but what I was saying, it's a learning curve. You can only bring your previous experiences to role-playing games. And back then, our previous experiences were war games and board games, and that was it. You know what I mean? So that's why that mentality of the GM must beat the players, or the players must beat the GM, and sometimes even the players must beat each other. That's come over from war games and
yeah, because that's you line your armies up, and that's the idea to smash the other one, achieve the mission.
The idea is to win. You want to be a
Yeah.
winner. But in role playing games, everyone's a winner. So it's and now we play role playing games for the. I don't play role playing games to win. I play for the experience.
Mhm.
It took me a long time to learn that, but yeah, got there in the end, and now role playing is my life basically.
Yeah, it's so easy to get sucked into. It's starting to dominate this channel a bit. I think people are getting a bit annoyed.
Sorry about that, yeah.
There's so much. No, but it's it's just I gotta say, like, one thing. I do an unboxing of I'll get a book or something, and I'm immediately blown away by the care and attention and the world building.
Yeah.
What could the likes of Hollywood, or what could other creators learn from role playing?
Be less concerned about the money and more concerned about the design and the passion. Let's face it, Hollywood is consumed by cash. They're not going to, and I think a lot of role-playing game companies are thinking, how can we make a return on this?
They're not saying the long game either.
No, it's I don't know. That's a difficult one. What could Hollywood learn?
Because there's something. Well, I'm just putting that out there, but creators in general, because there is something special about when you pick up a role-playing game, even if you're no intention of playing. If you ever get your hands on a rule book, or a core book, there's something different. And I've noticed this, and it's very simple. There's something when you're picking this thing up, even before getting to the actual rules.
Yeah,
you read those first couple of chapters setting up the world. You're reading something different.
Absolutely.
You are being dragged in, and there's I can't quantify it. I can't put it into words, but there's definitely a passion there.
Yeah. It definitely has a different effect on you creatively. And as far as absorbing media, it's definitely a different way of doing things. But going back to your original question about what Hollywood can learn, I think they've already learned. Because if you think about it, all the biggest successful shows that we've been seeing recently, all the people that have been in them or written them or created them or been part of them were role players. Like the guys who ran The Expanse, who did The Expanse TV show and the books. They're role players. I can guarantee George R.R. Martin played Birthright in the 1990s. D&D, who did the Game of Thrones TV show, they're both role players. So all those guys that were gaming all those years ago and learning a few things about heroism, story, structure, character, and everything in those games has now gone on to work in Hollywood. I think if Hollywood wants to learn anything, wants to take anything from gaming, they should just hire more old role players. That's what they should be doing.
Because there is an imagination, without doubt, and it's like I said, it's almost like that childlike, back to being a young child where you're completely unfettered. There's something releases, and you're not. I think if you're an author, there's a self-consciousness about it, or you must compare. Where I don't think we seem to have that in role playing. There seems to be just more doing it for the joy of it.
Yeah, and if you enjoy it, and like I said earlier, if you can put that joy onto the pages and people can feel that, that's half the battle. A lot of the games that I buy at the moment, I've bought on a feeling. I've kind of looked at the design and the feel. I'm thinking, actually, I'm actually quite attracted to that. And like you said earlier, when you crack the rule book open, you start reading straight away. When you're pulled into that world, you want to go along for the ride, and the best way to go along for that ride is to be part of it. And role playing. There isn't anything quite like role playing. I think computer games are coming a long way as far as sort of emotional and personal involvement, but they're still telling a story at the end of the day. Role playing games, you are so much part of that story. You can do pretty much whatever you want with it. And if you can attract that kind of passion and attention from your readers as a games designer, or even as just the book itself, then there's nothing.
As I said, you can read a lot of these books. And sorry, I haven't read yours yet, but that's on the list.
Well, that's disgusting.
But I know I'm a terrible person. What can I say? I'm just doing this to get clicks and likes. I'm a scumbag.
What do you think I'm here? What are you talking
about? We're on the same page. Nah, it's just when you read though, even if you have no intention of playing the game, like I said, I have discovered something special or rediscovered, if that makes sense, because I think I maybe missed it the first time.
Yeah,
I went through because it was maybe going through a player's perspective, but when you're reading the core rulebook with the thought of either running the game or just having it.
Yeah.
I've got a new appreciation, especially since doing this channel. I look at things through a different lens.
Yeah.
And I do see something special there, and I think you need to be part of it and part of the mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And if that could be translated into other medium, we'd have so much better entertainment.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of the entertainment that we're getting at the moment is the stuff that I enjoy. Feels like the showrunners have just been told, here's your money, go nuts. And that's, to me, is just perfect. I don't know if you watch at the moment, there's two shows that I'm watching on Apple TV at the moment called For All Mankind. And there's another one.
No, I haven't done.
Yeah, I mean, For All Mankind is literally just brilliant. And it's not, and with the HBO shows, it's literally like, well, we've made our money because people are paying subscriptions to go off and make a decent show. You know what I mean? They're not worried
I think they're
about
the last streaming service that still has that
there's nobody that has
mindset.
that. No. I mean, Apple probably does because it's probably got the cash to do it. I kind of get the feeling that HBO kind of does, and they're still doing some decent stuff.
I love the Spawn series, like back in the day. Like that was
the thing
genius.
Is, I think creators just need to be let loose. They shouldn't be worrying about bean counters. They shouldn't be worrying about returns on investment. If you're confident in your filmmaking abilities, and even coming back to the main point, game writing abilities, you should be allowed just to be let loose and just go off and be creative. The moment you start putting borders and restrictions on what you can and can't write about, then you're not being creative. You're writing for numbers and you're writing graphics. You're not.
You become a formulaic, and then that's
absolutely. And then all that's appealing to is the accountants, and nobody wants that.
Yep. No, absolutely. One thing you're doing that's impressed me because I've noticed a lot of game creators, they're reluctant to actually facilitate run games themselves. Is there a difference between, like, as a game writer, normally a GM, or is it when they're not a GM? Is that confidence in? Because I've talked to some people and they've like, oh no, we don't. You play test it and tell us what you think, and it's like, well, it's your game. You know, if anyone's going to know how to run it, it's going to be you.
Yeah.
But one thing you're doing is you're actually running games and letting people see, here's how it works. How important is that?
I think it's incredibly important. I think you'll find that probably 95% of games designers are GMs, and they want to translate what they've learned, what they know, and what they're passionate about into a game. And that's what I did. That's why I wrote those dark places. I was writing a game that I wanted to play. That's the game that I wanted to play. It was rules light. It was dark science fiction. And it's the game that I wanted to play. So and that's why I designed it. Part of playing the game myself and running the game myself is, well, actually, there's three sides to that. One is, to be brutally honest with you, is promotional purposes.
Yeah, but that's,
I want people to see the game because I'm trying to.
Nobody should be afraid to promote, and that's a something I always talk about in this channel is like people are so self-conscious about self-promotion.
Yeah,
you don't have to be that annoying. Just buy my stuff. There's 100 ways to promote. And there's absolutely, it's vital today. If you're an independent creator, you have to promote.
You've got absolutely no choice.
But how do you promote in an engaging way that gets people on board? That's that's the eternal struggle.
It's the best way to do it. It's to run games. It's to run the game that you're passionate about. Because if you get passionate about the game that I try to, when I'm running games, I get really involved with it. I don't know if you've already noticed during this conversation, you've asked a couple of questions and I've been chatting and my mind's gone off in a completely different direction.
But that's here. We love tangents here. That's what it's all about.
You've probably asked half a dozen questions that I've not actually answered them yet. But and it's like that with when I'm running games, I'll go off onto tangents. To me, in my head, it's detail. But it's just me getting passionate about what I enjoy, and I enjoy running games. It doesn't have to be my own game. I just enjoy running games full stop. With my own games, I do want people to see it because I'm trying to sell it. Secondly, I enjoy running it, and I want people to be entertained, and I want the people playing it to have fun with it. I wouldn't be writing it otherwise. I'm not writing it to exist in a void. I'm writing it to be played and people to have fun with it. But thirdly, and this is probably my narcissistic side of things, I want people to see the game how I see it. So I want people to experience the game the way that I envisioned it. I can talk about it as many times as I want in the book about what its inspirations are, the kind of games that you run, how to run the game. That's fine. But like I said earlier, once that game is in the hands of the gaming group, it's theirs to do with what they wish. I know people who have turned those dark places into an action adventure game. I think Boys of the Baltic Star were using the system for a 1930s sort of high adventure game. You know what I mean? So people use it for what they want to use it for. But when I'm running the game, this is basically me
And
saying,
you don't feel like they're betraying the game in any sense by doing that?
no, they're not portraying the game at all. The game system is out there to be used as people want to use it. They can hack, chop, and change it. I do that to other people's games. I've been doing that to other people's games for 40 years. So I've absolutely no issues at all. And people can hack, chop, and change it, and then share those hacks if they want to. Put it on the internet and say, do you know what? I've actually introduced this as a weapon, or I've actually changed the damage rules. Check this out. That's no problem at all. Like I say, once that game's out there, it's not mine anymore. All I can do is try and show people what I want out of the game, why I designed the game, and the kind of game that I envision people running with it.
That's the place where Hasbro shot themselves in the foot because they didn't understand the crowd.
You can't set the standards and how people play role-playing games. I do know people do get upset saying they've done this, they've done that, they've changed it. Well, then just ignore it then.
Yeah, but I was talking about the OGL, that's where they really... they did not understand the customer base.
Massive mistake. Yeah, it was a huge public relations nightmare. So, no, that was a huge... In fact, that was almost cruel to designers worldwide and small companies who are relying on the Dungeons & Dragons OGL, this non-revocable license. That was a cruel thing to do.
And they didn't understand that...
It was, again, we come back.
That's the lifeblood,
It wasn't them calling the shots. It was the accountants calling the shots. What kind of money can we make? Oh, the first thing we can do is destroy the competition. No, I'm sorry. That was a massive mistake.
That's where the short-sightedness, because that's not the competition.
It isn't. That's
people. How many times have you been introduced to something like a one-shot, and then that's led you back to the core rulebook that you would never have picked up before?
I've got loads of games up here because of that. I've got loads of games because I've... what was it now? Dungeons & Dragons put me onto Pathfinder. Dungeons & Dragons 3.0 onto Pathfinder. I had a great time with Pathfinder. I don't own it anymore. I have a tendency to get into a game, buy loads of stuff, play it for a year, then sell everything. Ridiculous. What I did do before when I could afford it. But yeah, little games put me onto other games. You know what I mean? It gets you interested in those other games. So no, that's Hasbro shooting themselves. Well, Wizards of the Coast shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah, when it's Hasbro's, Hasbro pulls the strings of Wizards of the Coast. They've, ever since Hasbro.
They're not trying to please gamers; they're trying to please shareholders. That's part of the problem, I think, and that's why places like the DMs Guild and Drive Through RPG and all these third-party creators are creating so much material. There's so much out there for the average game. It's fantastic. To revoke the license like that, to basically just wipe out that entire community, is absolutely ridiculous.
It's funny because I'm obviously a Call of Cthulhu player, and I just laughed at Chaosium. They're just like, "Oh, thanks for the free advertising." And then every other game just went, "We're not Wizards of the Coast," and that was it. Sold.
What are you doing?
Thank you for that gift of helping us along.
I think it was great, actually. I think a lot of independent, smaller studios had a fantastic time because, you know what I mean? People were like, what are you doing? We're going to move to something that doesn't treat us like crap. So, I mean, obviously, that's all been turned around now, but still,
the damage is done. People are always going to have one eye open.
Absolutely. And I think the apology was disingenuous. That was just a PR sort of exercise. But at the end of the day, people have still got the OGL. So at the end of it, the player base, the community came out on top. So
yeah, but I think people have slightly adjusted their sails now, knowing that that could always be around the corner. And I think it's led to a resurgence, I think, of alternative games.
Yeah.
Because like I said, there's a D&D space, then there's everything. And this space is so huge that everything else space, you get lost in it, and you can play loads of different systems. Phil introduced me to the Free League games, and I absolutely love them. Like I
love Free League, yeah.
Their whole way and building. We're currently playing an Alien RPG. We just finished Heart of the Gods there. We're about to start Destroyer of the World, having an absolute blast.
Yeah.
In fact, we're having so much fun. Like, we didn't even need a xenomorph to turn up, you know what I mean? Because we're so busy stabbing each other in the back and doing the whole corporate intrigue.
So much about what might happen. You're making sure that you're going to survive these scenarios. So you end up, the actual story becomes more about you trying to outdo each other than it does about the actual creature.
Yeah, and there's still a good-natured banter about it. And that's the thing. It's not like Vampire, for example, where people take that literally.
Yeah.
And they start stabbing each other in the back in real life. It's like, whoa. Okay, so how do you not betray your customer? How do you engender loyalty? What is your ethos in that?
Oh, blimey, that's a good one. I don't look for loyalty. If they enjoy it, they enjoy it. If they don't, they don't. There's nothing I can do about people's feelings about the game.
Okay, how do you
Or-
not betray your customer base or
just
make them feel like they've been betrayed?
It's really simple. You just don't be a dick. You don't be a dick, and you get stuff out, and you don't sort of pull the rug out from under people. It really is as simple as that. I mean, after Those Dark Places came out, I had all these massive plans about campaigns and all sorts of stuff. But I kind of realised that people quite enjoyed the one shots, and that's kind of what it was sort of designed for. So I made sure there was like a follow up of adventures. So I was releasing one adventure every 5 or 6 months or something like that, so people could have fun with it. I wanted people to create their own games. It wasn't just about what I was giving to them, but I also wanted to make sure that I was there. Answer questions. I don't like leaving people hanging if somebody leaves a question. Like the other day, last Thursday when Pressure was released, I spent the day scouring the internet looking for questions about that game, just in case somebody had said, "Oh, what's this like? What's that like? What's this like?" Because in my mind, I'm thinking, if I don't get an answer, that's just rude. You know what I mean? So you make sure. It's not like I'm making myself available 24 hours a day, because unfortunately I've got a life outside role playing. Unfortunately, but I try to make myself available and just be generous and just be kind and just be honest. That's the only thing you can be, really. I'm not writing exclusively for Pressure and Those Dark Places. I've got loads of other projects which I'm working on as well.
Actually, funny enough, I just had a question in the chat.
Yeah.
The elder on Facebook. Was your website Adventures Writers Academy?
Is your website Adventures Writers Academy? I'm not sure. Is your website? No. Well, is your website Adventures Writers?
You're not running.
No, I'm not.
I think you picked up. I might take one of your courses to learn how to write for gaming.
You're
not.
No, I'm not on the academy. No, not at all. I don't talk to anybody. I don't know much about it, to be honest with you. The only time I speak to people or talk about gaming, etc., is when I'm doing interviews like this. So other than that, I don't really talk about it. So I mean, I'd consider it, but at the moment, it's just having a time. See, role play design in games and Farsight games isn't a full-time job for me. It's something that I do in my spare time. Because I've got an actual day job, which is really annoying. Don't get me wrong,
trust me, I'm in the same boat. I would love to.
If I could do it full time tomorrow, I'll be straight away. I'll just quit. Off we go. Job done.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. It's horrendous because you're doing something you don't enjoy. Let's be honest, you're not passionate, but you give your best. When you do a job, you give your best. You know what I mean? You're like, I'm here to do a day's work. I'm here for fair trade.
Of course.
But especially I'm living in London, and the culture here is you must have your own job. It's not just a job; it's your whole social circle. It's a weird culture, and I'm not about that.
No,
especially being a nerd. What have I got in common with
with the average?
I watched reality TV show last night. I'm like, good for you, pat on the head. That must be really fun. Well, I was a wizard last night. I can't even explain it. I spent 3 hours, rolling dice and reviewing them and doing weird stuff. You wouldn't get it.
Well, I mean, it's each to their own. But I'm.
Oh yeah, I never slag anybody off having a passion.
I work to live. I don't live to work.
Yeah.
I go to work to earn a wage to pay my bills, and that pays for where I live and enables me to have the free time to spend time with my family, of course, my wife and son. But it also enables me to do all this kind of stuff. That's the reason why I do it. Although I have spent an inordinately large amount of time these last few months sat in front of the television because I've missed out on a lot of shows. So right now I'm trying to absorb loads of TV shows that I've missed out on.
I'm not a TV fan. It's very few and far between. TV, I think, they're very corporatized, and also they don't have a plan. They go season by season, and usually by the second or third season of a show, they've written themselves into a corner.
Yeah,
and I just
that's what I think. That's why I've turned to streaming services. That's what I think. Apple at the moment is probably banging out some of the best shows. I mean, For All Mankind has been consistently fantastic. Really, and I think the second series of Slow Horses just started, which is really, really good. I kind of gravitate back to Netflix every now and then, but even a lot of those shows have become quite formulaic.
I give up on Netflix. I just cancel my subscription. It's like I can't. I'm wasting my time.
That's me anymore. And the only reason why I got Paramount is because I'm a big Star Trek fan, and I've got Disney because they put Star on there, and they've got loads of fantastic old classic movies on there, which is absolutely brilliant. But other than that, I mean, I don't watch terrestrial TV anymore. There's just nothing. There's nothing that grabs me anymore. There's nothing that interests me. I don't get excited about TV anymore unless it's shows like For All Mankind or the recent House of the Dragon, which I got really passionate about. I don't get excited about TV shows like I used to. Maybe that's just because I'm getting old and cynical, and you know what I mean. I
think no, there's a genuine. People are starting to think that, and the thing is, it's happened earlier. Like people are hitting 30, thinking I'm old. You know, life's over. Because I don't get joy. I think it's like it's not because that. It's because back to what we're talking about. If you're not writing something with a passion and a genuine love for what you're doing, it's going to translate. And there's too much of this happy, not even happy, but happy meal, fast food chain-esque type content being put out there, and it is content. It's not
exactly. You use the word there. It's content. I hate the term content. I was called a content creator a while ago, and I just sat there and smiled. And in my mind, I was going, "No, I'm not. I don't create content. I don't just sit there yabbering. You know what I mean? I literally sit down and I spend time getting emotionally involved with stuff. Maybe that's a little bit rude, but I don't like the term content because it makes it feel like more of a
no, because we get called. If you're on YouTube, if you're a commentator, you're
to convey about of material, and that's just not what I'm into.
Actually, bore yourself. You may as well just go and work in a factory if that's what you do.
Yeah,
in a creative sphere, or even talking about films. If you're not emotionally invested, and you're just going through the motion to, what does the algorithm say today? What words must I put on my channel to get the clicks and likes?
Yeah,
you may as well work in a fast food restaurant.
So no, I try to avoid. Probably why I've missed out on so many shows because I've been avoiding all that over the last few months.
I don't think you're missing out on anything, to be honest.
So I know what I like, and I just if you know what I mean. What everybody else wants to watch is fine, but I'm very limited as to what I want to watch these days because I'm just not excited about it. I'm just not interested.
And when the marketing departments call you a name, if you don't like a show, you're an istophobe. It's like, really? That's how you're selling it to me? If you don't watch a show, you're a terrible, evil person. All right, okay.
Okay, fine. Then. I'm just not interested. Can we not have that bit in the middle where we can just go, it's not for me, bye. And then we just move on.
Apparently not anymore.
No.
That's one thing I'd say, actually. That's why the role-playing sort of community, I hate that word actually as well, community, because that's a bit culty.
I wouldn't say it's culty because
it's the potential to be, because it's bandied about that much.
Yeah, absolutely. If you define it down to a single style or game, then and that was it. That was the be all. And if you don't play it, then you're an outsider. Then I'd probably agree that's probably a bit culty. But I think community. We're all talking about role playing. We're talking about role playing now. People talk about different games all over the place. And I talked to quite a lot of people on Twitter, and it's still Twitter. It's not X, Elon.
That was the worst rebranding ever.
I've
down like a wet fart. I was like,
and to be honest with you, Twitter's a bit of a cesspool at the moment. It's a cesspool.
It's horrendous.
But now the only reason why I'm on there is because it's still got quite a good.
I love your handle, by the way.
Somebody wake up Hicks.
Somebody wake up. I'm just like.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. No, I don't know where I got it from. I think I was literally trying to think what to call myself. I was just going to be Farsight Games or John the Man Hicks, which is what I used to call myself. And Aliens was on, and I went, "Oh, perfect."
But a handle like that just tells me everything I need to know. I'm like, he gets it, And then I see your mindset. I see and it's just a phrase, right? But.
Yeah,
I then know what you're passionate about, and it was funny when we were talking before you came on. Like, I don't know if I could go on to a horror channel. I'm not really a horror fan. Then you start talking about the Thing and the aliens, and you're like, really? Is there? Let's do a wee bit of horror stuff. Yeah. Is there a preconception? And this is the stereotype I'm trying to break on this channel. Everyone thinks horror is the slasher.
Yeah.
Was that kind of what you were thinking about coming on a horror channel?
I think horror to me it's one of those eye of the beholder sort of things. So when I watch horror, there's certain things that I look for. I'm not interested in concepts. I'm more interested in character, which is why I love Aliens so much. Which is why I like The Thing, because the characters are just fantastic. I'm not into gore. I'm not fussed about gore because a lot of the time, some of the films, especially like the sort of video nasties and slasher films and gore effects,
torture porn.
It was literally just, how disgusting is this? A lot of it was just a lot of fun. Like the Reanimator movies, but
there was characterization in the Reanimator movies.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
And
teenage, you don't see that. You just see the gore flashed across the screen. Same when I first watched The Thing in sort of early '80s, Well, when it came on that network TV, I think it was like 84, 85. I remember watching that and just being revolted by it because it was just gorgeous, just disgusting. I think that's mainly because my parents were going, "Oh, it's disgusting, it's ridiculous." And it wasn't until years later when I sat down and watched it again in the early 90s and went, "Oh my God, this is absolutely incredible." Yes, you've got this visual gore, but I think that's part of the storytelling because it sort of shows just how unknowable this creature is. The same as the
part of the horror, yeah.
And then you got the paranoia, then you got the fantastic characters, then you got the little one-liners. You know what I mean? It's such a well-constructed, really well put together film, which came out in completely the wrong year. Thanks, E.T. for nothing. And yeah, it's just an absolutely brilliant film. But to me, horror, I think I'm more interested in kind of the psychological aspects of it, how it affects people, the situation that they find themselves in. And I think that's why I love Alien so much, because it's not just about the creature, this Lovecraftian nightmare. It's about characters and just blue-collar workers, which is one of the reasons why I wrote Those Dark Places. It's just about blue-collar workers trying to survive a situation that they have absolutely no comprehension of. And I think that's just amazing how it affects them.
Because funny enough, we're going to do a review. We're going back to 1979, and we're doing a review of Aliens because we're taking this break between Chariot of the Gods and Destroyer Worlds. So we're going to do a movie review because we may as well look at the franchise. Actually, the Alien RPG has taken that universe to another level for me. You know, it was great in the first movies. Not so much like Ridley Scott, go to bed, you're tired. Have a lie down, son.
I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened with those last two films. It's annoying.
Ridley Scott thought he was a big boy and could write.
And not only that, I think the writers, it felt like, especially Prometheus, it felt like they'd watched the film 20 years before, not watched it since, and then tried to write a script based on what they thought they remembered. And that's just like, no, guys, this is not.
That's the RPG game. Took the good parts of Prometheus.
Is that Prometheus is actually a good film. It looks great. It's well done. It's got a nice clipping along story. Visually, it's stunning. They should have just left the Alien universe out of it. That would have been great as its own film.
Yeah.
But you tried to shoehorn the Alien into it. It honestly felt like a script had been written for a completely different film based on Von Daniken stuff. And then they thought at the last minute, let's stick some Alien in it. And it just felt a little bit, I don't know.
They did that with Cloverfield as well.
A bit cheap. Sorry?
They did that with Cloverfield as well.
Yeah, they did. I mean, Cloverfield, the original film, I watched that the other day, actually, because I got back into Godzilla.
Godzilla Minus One. That comes out next week.
Yeah, can't wait for that.
I'm actually
so
talking about not being excited for movies. I haven't been excited for a movie in ages. No. I'm like, Godzilla, and it's $11 million. They made the movie in $11 million.
Yeah, I know. And it's just astounding because it's done really well in North America, which is apparently it's the biggest box office opening in North America for a Japanese film. And it's like, I've got to see it. And it just looks amazing. Everything I'm hearing about it is what I want from a Godzilla film. Because the first two Godzilla films, the 54 one, which I bought, I've got it here actually, which I bought recently, the BFI version. It's the original cut, the works. It's a stunning piece of filmmaking. It really, really is. And from an age in 54 when they just lifted the band.
You can still watch it now. That's
stunning. Absolutely stunning. But this new one, no, it looks amazing. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
And the only other film I'm excited about is Dune Part 2. Because I enjoyed the first one. I really, really did. It was a little bit long. But visually, but it's Dennis Villeneuve. And he made
visually,
it's stunning.
We were talking this because actually we're doing Dale and I in the chat there, we're doing the Peter Jackson series. So Peter Jackson is originally a horror director.
Yeah.
And we've got up the Two Towers now.
Yeah.
Doing his whole back catalogue. And funny enough, we started branching into Frank Herbert and June. And I'm a David Lynch fan. I will always that place.
I love that.
Will always have a special place in my heart.
Alan Smith is a fantastic director. It is a brilliant film. It's great. Maybe it took some liberties with the story, and maybe it rained on Arrakis at the end.
Think of the time, the limitations, but you wanted to know more about that universe.
But visually, the design of it is exactly what I wanted out of Dune. It looked amazing. The way it's written in the book, and the way they sort of transcribed the visuals from the book onto the screen. No, absolutely loved it. I think Villeneuve took a bit of a step back from that.
Yeah,
use that kind of
that's where I have a problem because it's a wee bit sanitized.
Yeah, absolutely. But I
still enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong. Even what's her face, wooden plank girl, she was alright on it. Zayenda or whatever you call her.
Yeah.
You know, she's a wooden plank, but she actually made an effort in that. So
I've not seen it other than the Spider-Man films. I've not seen her in much else.
Yeah, but that's all you need. You know what I mean?
But I think he had an interview the last week. I think, and he said that the second one's going to be a bit more of an action film. And I'm like, yeah. I found the atomics. I don't care. Just show me the atomics. You know what I mean? So I don't care.
That has been one of the best lines.
But no, it's I'm really excited about that. That's what I'm excited about.
I think what people don't get their head around with Dune, for example, is it's science fiction, but it's biological science fiction.
Yeah.
Because the human race, because they had the Butler and you had the complete wiping out of the thinking machine.
Yeah.
And rather than going technology-wise, they went biological. And it's actually biological machines.
Yeah, thanks to the spice. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's, they went the human route. The only machinery at the end of the day is what they've got on the planets and the starships. Everything else is based around the spice and, like you say, the human element. And that's what makes it a fantastic story. I love the idea that they've gone back to the feudal sort of way of running things.
Yeah.
Because it's a vast empire. You know what I mean? But they probably thought this is the best way to do it. And we get
it's Shogun in space, let's be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's
I love Clavell's work. He out of horror, he's one of my favorite writers.
Yeah.
He really, and each of his books different. Shogun's different from Noble House or King Rat. They're all completely different, but he has that particular way of writing the human condition.
Yeah.
I kind of see that with Frank Herbert and Dune.
Yeah.
And even the horror aspects that are brought in there, I know they kind of touch on it, but it's almost similar to 40K in terms of the grim dark. There is that grim dark aspect there of how people got to the biological machines, the torture and the Xalangs.
Yeah,
I can't remember it's been ages, but they were an abomination.
Yeah,
tortured humans. The almost graft machinery to them.
Yeah. I've always called Warhammer 40K Death Metal Dune because it's kind of got that element of Dune to it, that kind of grandioseness and that kind of weird mystical element. But it's got bigger guns and shoulder pads. So, but Dune is I think Dune's stunning because it's the characters that drive Dune, the story and the characters that drive Dune. In fact, those first 3 books, Dune, Messiah, and Children of Dune, as far as I'm concerned, that's the trilogy. When it ends with
Dune Heretic. Is it God Emperor Dune or Dune Heretic?
It's got Emperor
Dune. Leto the Second anyway, and his arc and with the Go Along the Golden Path, which
But that's when it started to get a little bit. I don't know.
I was scratching my head a bit. I'll not lie.
The Golden Path was an interesting concept. I'm not 100% sure that was his only choice, but I think it made sense for the story. So God Emperor Dune was a bit of very, very talky. But that was very, very good. But I think my favourite is Children of Dune, just for the sheer ballsiness of it. And the fact that he not only sort of revisited the planet years later, he tore down what people considered to be the hero of the first book. At the end of the day, the entire lesson of those 3 books is don't put your heroes.
Because Paul Modé just became Sharan the Fourth. He just effectively became the same.
He became responsible for mass murder across thousands of planets. And he knew that, and he felt he couldn't stop it. I always thought that I thought Muad'Dib was a bit of a coward because he saw the Golden Path, but he wouldn't walk it.
Yeah.
But his son did.
Yeah.
So he had the balls to actually say, well, actually, this is what's going to save the human race. But then, of course, we never actually found out exactly what Frank Herbert had in mind for the what was going to happen because he never wrote the final book. So, but no,
I always felt like you were hanging on a limb. Like the last scene when Leto's falling down that chasm, they'd set up the ambush, and I'm like, what? That's it.
The thing is, it's a bit like George Martin books. There was large.
I am not a fan of George R.R. Martin.
I've only read the first 4 books, and I enjoyed them. But my issue was there was such a gap between the release of the books. I was reading because there was so much going on, and it was the same with the TV show as well. I'll get about a third of the way through the book and thinking, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't remember you. And what the hell is he talking about? I've got to go back and read the last book. And then I'll get halfway through that book and I'll be like, I don't know what's going on. And
it's a style of writing as well, because he goes, obviously it's POV, character based. The only chapter I was excited about was Melisandre's.
Yeah.
Okay, what is she about?
Yeah.
She stares into a fire. What are
you talking about? The only 3 characters I cared about, and in the show as well, was Jon, Arya, and Sansa, because they were really, really interesting characters. Jon was an atypical hero, but not being able to do atypical hero things. Sansa was put in an impossible situation, but she was strong in spite of that. Not that, the situation she was in didn't make her strong. She was already strong. She just needed to find that.
Because in the book, she didn't come across the bubblehead she did on the like she was a complete bubblehead
Yeah,
in the
absolutely.
TV
Yeah,
show
and then
because
later
that
on,
actress, she's horrendous.
yeah, and then later on, she was just a fantastic character. And then Arya, because I just liked Arya because she was a little bit ballsy, having a bit of fun. So I was fine with the end of the series when they all survived because that's pretty much what I wanted to see.
I lost it after season 6. I kind of went, oh
no, it went off the board at season 6. I mean, I enjoyed it right to the end of the show. I enjoyed the last season. I know a lot of people didn't. But to be honest with you, I can't give having too many expectations, and I think that's probably why I enjoyed it. I think HBO's biggest problem with that, the biggest mistake, was leaving it for 2 years before they made the last series, or before they released the last series, and then only making it 6 episodes. It's like, what are you doing, guys? You are literally just saying, "Oh, we're finished." It's like, and I mean, I think Vice, I think D&D, the showrunners get a lot of flack from, and it's unjustified because
the thing that annoyed me about those two,
they create one of the biggest franchises the world has ever known. And
but
they
they're always whining about the budget. That's what annoyed me. Even earlier on, they're always, we don't have no budget. We don't have no budget. I was like, don't worry about that. We don't need to say, like, the whole thing with Daryl was it took a whole script. And that was to me, I was more interesting script and a whole storyline that I was more interested in finding out about. But they're more interested in dragons, and I don't know how much that's studio interference. But all they complained about was the budget, and you're like, you've got the highest grossing TV show ever.
Yeah,
the Northern Ireland Tourist Board. You know what I mean? They were creaming themselves.
People who invested in these characters. Why are you worried about budget? The thing I liked about the show is every season you'd have a build up to an event. So like the Battle of the Bastards, or the Battle on the Ice, or the Battle of Home, and what have you. And those were absolutely brilliant. And I think in the last season they wanted 3 events, and so those events that's why I condensed it down to.
Was it the Battle of Winterfell? I just cringed.
You see, no, I quite enjoyed Battle of Winterfell, but I would have preferred to have it happened in the daytime, so I could see what was going on. Yeah. Although saying that, I'd say I changed TVs after that series ended, and it's actually much better on my 4K TV. I can actually see stuff that's going on, and it was good, and I enjoyed it. And I even enjoyed the attack on King's Landing, and when she flipped. Spoilers, when she flips.
If you're bound to be beyond spoilers by now at this stage,
And that kind of makes sense to me because the last 5 seasons, people have been holding her back. And you know what I mean? This is the same woman that crucified people down the road for 100 miles, who set fire to people who surrendered. So, you know what I mean? So I don't think she was a Targaryen, so she wasn't all there anyway. And I think that's why the effect of what happened to her was kind of lessened somewhat, because it's 6 episodes.
Cornish weddings, eh?
Yeah, you're thinking it's going to get going, and then next thing you know, she's dead. You're like, oh, okay. So, but no, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it up to the very end. I look forward to every episode. So
that was the thing, because I haven't watched House of the Dragon because honestly, like
very good.
I stepped away from other genres and I just got in a little horror bubble because I was getting sick and tired of the calling people names and the nastiness and the bitterness and the no desire for creation, just corporate stuff. And at least the horror genre is still quirky, strange movies, and it's carried on through it all this. And in fact, if you look at the box office over the last year, it's horror movies that have kept the cinema doors open. Still making a profit.
And the good thing about horror films as well is that you can turn around to somebody and say, "You like that? That's disgusting," and you can go, that's why I like it.
Love it. I will say that, especially when I talk to horror creators, never apologize for being a horror creator. Never apologize.
No, you shouldn't.
Embrace it.
No matter what you're creating, unless it's actively harming somebody, of course. You should never apologize about what you enjoy, what you create, what you consume, what you make, because there's going to be an audience for it, and and you're not going to be pleasing everybody all the time. But if you go out of your way to please people who probably won't like your product anyway, then you just waste your time creatively. So never apologize for what you enjoy. Never apologize for what you create.
Yeah, because
as long as people aren't dropping dead in the street because of it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's that separation of fantasy and reality. There's this weird notion at the moment you can't do that. If you enjoy something, then you're doing it in real life. We've had actually long form discussions and debates on censorship in horror, morality in horror. The moral tales. What was the other one we did? Sensitivity. So highly sensitive people in horror. Because there's these strange folk that are super sensitive, but then they spend their time getting into horror groups and channels and complain about it. It's like, well, the clue's in the name.
Why are you here?
If you know you're going to get upset, but maybe don't come in.
Maybe move on to something else. But I think as well, I think that's part of the attraction to horror to some people, because there's that thrill of it's going to upset you, and again, you kind of get the thrill. And I think some people, I don't know. A lot of the time when I see people screaming about what they hate, I think a lot of it's just soapbox attention. They've got themselves a platform. They know that loads of other people like it. So if they scream how much they hate it,
the anti and the what do you call
don't
it?
just
The
pay attention to
edgelord,
me, but pay attention to the stuff that I like, or pay attention to the stuff that I'm passionate about.
or me. Pay attention to me.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
not even,
Yeah. So and that's why I don't get involved with quite a lot of it. There's going back to role playing on Twitter.
I was going to, funnily enough, I was just about to come in talking about that sense of horror.
Yeah.
And does that something factors into mind when you think about the robustness of your characters? For example, 5th edition D&D, everyone's a superhero and could be hacked to bits, and their health meter goes down like that. Call of Cthulhu, you get a brick to the back of the head, you're gone.
Yeah.
Alien, you encounter, in fact, I say Call of Cthulhu's easy mode compared to the Alien RPG, because you encounter as a xenomorph or a neomorph, that's it. You're dead. There's no ifs, buts, or maybes.
Yeah.
It gets 3 turns before you start.
Yeah.
Is that something, and there's a thrill in that your character could go, it's just one mistake, and that's it, over.
Yeah.
Is that a focus or a consideration you've brought into your games?
100%. With those dark places, especially, basically you could trip over and die. Because basically the way I've designed those dark places is that you are out in space, you're in the middle of nowhere, there's no help coming, and you're in a tin can. And if you step outside the tin can, everything wants you dead. The universe is cruel, and it's dark, and it's cold, and you won't survive. And it's going to do everything it can to make sure that you die. And the way that I designed the game was there's like a psychological aspect to it. So, what would that do to your mind as a person whilst you're out there in the deep dark black? And one of the things that add tension is threat. And there's no bigger threat than dying, let's face it. So if you create a character, you could get shot. I mean, the combat in those dark places especially is about a page long. It basically says if you get shot, chances are there's a high chance you're just going to wind up dead. Sorry.
Which in real life, bullets aren't fun. You don't want them anywhere near you.
Because getting shot in space sucks. So the game itself is geared more towards you don't want to get into a fight. So you do everything you can to avoid it. So what are you going to do creatively to make sure that you survive the situation or work out the situation or get past that threat or get off the station or get out the starship without having to shoot a gun? Pressure is a little bit more different. You are given the tools to fight. So whereas I
was about to, I wanted to actually do a segment just talking about pressure and the premise behind it.
Pressure is a bit more focused on here's a gun, here's some body armor. So not only are you going to face these things, we're actually going to send you out there to face them. So we know what's going on. You get out there and sort it out. But I've kept that level of danger in it. So there is a chance that you could get one shot, but if the bullet goes past your armor, that's it, you're dead. So yeah, you can go in all guns blazing if you want, and there's rules in the book which allow you to do that if that's what you want to do. But the focus of the game is, for God's sake, don't get shot.
So I think that was a good chance. Actually, Pressure's your latest game. You've released it. You're actually out on channels play testing, which is amazing, by the way. Honestly, that's showing confidence in your product as well. The fact you're prepared to take it out with players and road test it live. That is no mean feat. And that's if anyone should support you for that reason alone, that you're prepared to put yourself out there and make the mistakes and deal with different players and actually deal with problems live. On a forum. That is amazing.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
What is the whole premise behind Pressure? What is the world of Pressure and just how it came to be?
Pressure, somebody said recently, if those dark places was Alien, Pressure is Aliens, because it's the same setting, it's the same sort of idea behind it, except like I was saying earlier, you're given the equipment to deal with it. So this time it's war, you're going out, you've got your guns and what have you. The basic premise of Pressure is that you're part of something called Special Operations Squads, SOS squads, and you're sent out to problem places. And that problem place could be anything. It's not set in stone in the book what those are. I haven't done like a bestiary of aliens and creatures and monsters. That's up for the games master to create. Because I found in the original book, if I did this sequence of different monsters, which people could come across, and then if the player read that, then all the tension's gone out. It's like when you play Alien, the tension is staying alive. You know there's an alien there. There's going to be an alien at some point. The clue's in the title of the damn game. But in those dark places and in Pressure, I've taken that out completely. You don't know what you're going to come up against. It could be a nutter with a gun who's gone insane on the space station. It could be a cultist. It could be a rival corporation. It could be an alien. It could be a ghost. You know what I mean? So it could be anything. It's just it covers all those aspects, so nothing is set in stone. And the game itself is basically, like I say, gives you the tools to go out there. But where in those dark places, it was based around one starship or one small crew, because you just had crew roles. So it was basically based more around like the crew of the Nostromo. This is much more open, so you can create characters to be in these teams, but you can also create a character as just a general character just existing in the universe. So I've opened up the setting completely. So I've got the hypercities on Earth. You've got orbital stations, you've got the settlements and mining stations throughout the solar system, and then you've got the stellar stations and settlements out in the greater galaxy. So you can game, if you open up the setting with characters, you can play anything you want. You can be a detective, you can be an entertainer jobbing from station to station, you can be an engineer looking for a job on a ship. You can do whatever you want. So I've literally just opened up the setting to everybody.
Oh, so you could do a murder mystery on a space station?
Absolutely. I mean, there's an entire... my inspirations, and quite obviously, are Alien, Outland, Blade Runner, Dead Space, all those kind of things. When you read the book, and I'm quite open about that, I wear those films and shows and games and everything on my sleeve. I talk about it in the book quite a lot, actually. When you read the books, you'll get a sense of Aliens, of the way that the SOS teams are set up. When I talk about the hypercities on Earth, it's Blade Runner. They've even got like artificial intelligence down there, which are trying to get off the planet because they've been banned and blah blah blah. It's very Blade Runner, and
that's actually very Asimov.
Yeah.
If you think about it, you've got Asimov's books centered around there's Earth, and then there's the outer colonies, and the outer colonies actually have shunned Earth, and there's that whole.
In this game, keeping Earth alive, because Earth is just a wreck. It got hit by an asteroid, wipes out billions of lives, and Earth is just a ravaged wreck. And the only thing that keeps it alive are the settlements and the supplies and the resources that that deep space is bringing into it, and it's controlled by the state and the corporations. So I bunged all that in, and then there's a bit of an Elysian feel to it. So you've got the orbital stations where the rich and powerful live, and then you get to Outland. So you've got the mining stations on the planets and the solar system, and then you're into alien territory when you go out further into space, because you don't know what's out there. And then there's all sorts of different threats, like the underworld, and there's cultists and all sorts of bits involved.
Sounds about like I watched the show, was it last year, The Expanse?
I love The Expanse, absolutely wonderful. I really
that whole I think it though, like TV as well, it got to the fourth season and it started writing itself into a corner and going on a loop of just political intrigue, and actually they almost forgot about the virus and the alien threat, because they got in that TV loop of stuff, and I was like, oh come on, you had such. I was on board, like first 3 seasons, I was on board. I was like, oh, this is, you just saw it open and open and open and open, and then season 4 just
it felt like it shrunk down to back to they actually corrected that, I think, in the following 2 seasons. It didn't end the way that I wanted. I was happy with the ending, but I as a science fiction fan, of course, I got my own expectations. But I thought it ended really, really well. I kind of wish they'd done another season. There's obviously still a lot more they could talk about. There's obviously
that set it up,
but the actual world itself.
Set up it could have went on. They weren't going to be limited, but they limited themselves, and I'm like, why did you do that?
Yeah, I think not only were they limited. I remember they jumped channels as well. I mean, they started out on Sci-Fi, got dropped, and then jumped to Amazon. So it's Prime. Which is, probably wasn't the greatest thing to happen for them, it does show there's like a little bit of a hiccup, like you say, during the show. But no, I really enjoy it. I was really happy because I wrote a role-playing game called Fire Team, which is like a science fiction military action game, and James S.A. Corey on Twitter. It's Twitter, Elon. James S.A. Corey on Twitter tweeted, "I'm interested in this game." I thought, great. Thanks, guys. That's kind of the celebrity endorsement I'm looking for. And it became one of my best-selling games. So thanks to those guys, I got a little bit of exposure and notoriety. But no, I enjoyed The Expanse because it was dark. You know what I mean? Space isn't kind. It isn't Star Wars. It's not Star Trek. I wanted to move away from the sort of clean cut corridors,
sanitized, safe
stuff. Yeah, I love the way there's 3 films that inspired the look and feel of it, and that's Alien, of course, because it's Alien. It's just the greatest film ever made. I always said that Alien was made by artists on every level, that every single one was at the top of their game.
Well, HR, we'll have to give props to HR Geiger. If it wasn't for him,
oh, absolutely. HR Geiger, you had HR Geiger on the creature side of stuff, and then you had Sid Mead and that's really embarrassing. I can't remember the guy's name.
I'm terrible with names, honestly. Just
the guy is just incredible in all the interior stuff. So you have these two very sort of definitive styles. No, Geiger.
But it worked, and that's collaboration. That's
Bobby Cobb. Sorry, that's the guy's name.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, absolutely brilliant. And then Outland, the Sean Connery High Noon classic, which I absolutely love the look of. I love the design in that. I think it's absolutely beautiful. I watched this show on YouTube called, what's it called? It's about model making. It's an ongoing show about model making. And they actually talked to the two guys that made the Conam 27 station on IO, built the model and what happened to it.
I haven't seen that.
It's devastating. I'll let you find that on YouTube. But it's devastating.
It's all these elements,
it's stunning, and it's on par with what Stanley Kubrick did to all the Starship models from 2001. Oh my god! And then 2010, the sequel to 2001, the year we made contact. Some of the interior shots on board the ships and that are just stunning. The design, the look, the feel, and I didn't see that kind of set design and feel until Aliens, and then I never saw it again until a film a few years ago called Underwater.
Oh god, no, that was Wooden Plank herself, Kristen Stewart.
I really enjoyed it. The design work in that film.
I thought my mate stitched me up, get me to watch that because I hate her. I can't stand her.
I thought she was all right in this.
You know what I mean?
I'll know if I'm.
Give me 2 minutes of a Kristen Stewart monologue, and my ears are bleeding, and I just want to end my life.
Well, luckily she didn't monologue. But I enjoyed that film. Design-wise, I thought that was stunning, and that reminded me of that sort of stuff. But that's the kind of look I was going for, that kind of clunky analog, sort of CRTV screen sort of feel. And I thought, I can't translate that into a game. And I thought, well, I'm not trying to translate it into a game. I'm trying to describe an aesthetic. So that's exactly what I went for. That's exactly how I described it. And people seem to enjoy that. So, and then I've got this fantastic artist, Nathan J. Anderson, who illustrated both books. And yeah, he took all that on board, that kind of 1980s aesthetic sort of design feel, and that's what he put into the book. And I couldn't be happy with the artwork. Thank you, Nathan.
Yeah, how hard is it to get somebody that shares your vision to put something together? Because that must be the frustrating thing if you've somebody that doesn't.
In this
share
case, because Osprey Games had a list of artists who they were going to speak to. Of course, I could suggest my own. It honestly depended on who was free. And one of the artists' portfolios that they sent me was Nathan Anderson's. And the very first picture that I saw of his when I opened up his portfolio was Alien. And it was his own render of Kane in the Alien chamber in the first film. And it was stunning. And I went, that's it. That's the guy. So he was my first choice. The other artist was great, don't get me wrong. But yeah, Nathan straight away. And I went through his portfolio and some of his work. He draws everything. He's done loads of different stuff. From loads of different genres, but a lot of his science fiction was just excellent, and it was exactly what I was looking for design-wise, especially with that kind of aesthetic. So yeah, I was really happy when he came on board, and I was over the moon when he came on board for the second book. That was absolutely
that's something the Alien RPG did very well, was explain the air scrubbers.
Yeah,
because that was the thing people could say, what are you doing in wet stuff in space and water dripping everywhere? It's stupid. It's like, no, there's actually a reason, because that's how the whole mechanism works of separating hydrogen. From water.
Andrew Gasker is one of the writers. He's like the keeper of the law of 26 box licenses. So I think he keeps the law for Alien, Predator, and Terminator. So he works on the Terminator role-playing game as well for Nightfall Games. So yeah, so Andrew Gasker, that guy pretty much wrote the book on the law of Alien and where different things sit as far as sort of canon's concerned. So yeah, he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, Terminator. The Sarah Connor Chronicles, I think that show was panned, like really unjustified the way it was treated.
Yeah, it wasn't.
And it actually did better than most of the movies in terms of the lore and actually bringing the universe together.
Yeah, definitely. It kind of felt like it sort of only took the first two movies into account, which is fine by me. I mean, my favourite is always going to be the first film by a country mile, and I like the second one. But as
talking about what's his face that plays Hicks, plays Reese.
Absolutely brilliant. And I actually quite like the third one, even though it wasn't great, and you know what I mean. It was a little bit formulaic, and I think it had a better car chase than the Matrix film that came out that year. But that was actually pretty good. But then after that, it was like they're just trying to
fell
win.
off a cliff.
You know what? Why? I don't care. I tell you what, I wanted to see. I wanted to see the future war as it was filmed in the first.
Yes,
film. That's what I wanted to see. And then when Terminator Salvation was coming out, I was thinking
it was this weird hybrid between 21st, 20th century.
Yeah, and how they envisioned the future back in the 80s. And then when the Terminator Salvation was announced, I was like, oh, this is it. It's going to show the future war. And it didn't do it for me at all, apart from the car chase, the sort of cyber bike chase. But that came out the legs of that big machine. That was quite cool.
Yeah.
But the rest
the
of it
harvester or whatever it was. But the storyline was just convoluted.
It's all over the place. And this is just people trying to do something different, trying to surprise the audience. Hey, check this out.
Oh, subvert your expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. You weren't expecting that, weren't you? No, I wasn't, and that's why it was crap. Yeah. So, and then it just went off the boil after that. And then I think it was Genesis next, and turns out that
I never even watched the last one. Like Genesis, I was done.
Actually, Dark Fate was it the last one? It wasn't actually that.
It
was nice to see Sarah Connor back up and running.
But then they tore her character apart. Apparently,
but it was just flat. It was just flat. I didn't care about anything that was happening on the screen, and everything felt like set piece to set piece to set piece to set piece, and it was just like I'm just bored. I'm sorry, I'm bored.
So how do you avoid in terms of games? How do you avoid that then? Going through the formula, go to room, the room. Here's a linear path.
Yeah.
But you still need to world build, because I've seen some games that people have thrown out there, especially drive-through RPG, and there's nothing.
No.
There's literally nothing to hang on to. You're like, what is this? Here's a character sheet, and make everything up yourself.
Yeah,
like, I could just make everything up myself. So how do you strike that balance between world building that gets people involved in that universe of that game, and also not subverting expectations that you're going to tear that world apart all the time, that it just becomes you can't tell one game from the other?
I learned a long time ago during I learned the most valuable lesson about an adventure called Legacy of Blood for Against the Dark Master, which is like the spiritual successor to Merp and Rollmaster. Excellent game, by the way, really, really good. And I wrote that for them, and they published it for me, and I was really happy with it. But it was linear. It was basically telling you, okay, this is your set piece. This is what's going to happen next. What's going to happen next. And because that's the way how I was writing adventures at the time. And I'd done some work for advanced Fighting Fantasy, and they were basically just dungeon crawls. And then I realised that I had more fun creating situations than I did creating adventures and stories. So I learned valuable lessons from Free League on the Alien role-playing game, because if you look at their adventures, you've got a location. It'll go through details of the location that you can explore, and then you've got events that might happen, and you've got acts of things that might happen, and what have you. But it's just a situation that it presents to you,
and it's not linear. You can use this or not. You just
go
a mix
directions. So that's what I try to do when I'm writing a game. I want to capture that flavour. When I was writing the adventures for Those Dark Places, I wanted to capture the flavour of what I was trying to say. I wasn't trying to tell a story, because it's not me telling the story. It's the games master that's going to tell the story at the end of the day. And I was, like I said earlier, I've got no control how they run that game. If I'm just going to sit there and saying, this is what happens, this happens next, this happens next, this happens next, that's not an adventure. That's me writing a short story and creating a railroad adventure. And that's really what I want to avoid these days. So I try to write a situation. And yeah, there may be certain sort of a route that you could take, like an obvious route.
Yep.
But I open up one of the most recent ones I did was called the Edward Report. And you've got no choice but to go in a certain route around the circular space station, but it's where you come into the space station that counts. I did another one called Gamma Sigma 12 Reports, where it's just an open station which you can explore, and there's all monsters and stuff kicking off. But yeah, I try to avoid telling a story. I don't want to tell a story. I want to introduce a situation.
But at the same time, you've got to, how do each of these games feel unique and not just generic? Could be anything. How do you strike that balance? Because that's one aspect of it. You don't want to railroad people in, but at the same time, you still have to have a universe. It has to be. Why is Predator different from Those Dark Places?
I like to think that I set the mood with the rule books. So with Those Dark Places, I set the mood basically by talking quite a lot about what my inspirations were, and then I set the mood by the way that I wrote it. Because I don't know if you read the book. It's written from the perspective that somebody's explaining the rules to you, like you're sat in an interview and they explain you the rules through the idea of that you're going to go into a simulation, and this is how the simulation works, and this is an example, and this is how this works. So the whole book, Those Dark Places especially, is like you're being interviewed by a corporate official who's explaining what's going to be expected from you and how the simulation, how the system works.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quirky. It's a bit of a strange way of explaining the book, but I was quite happy with that. It is very Marmite, and I've done the same thing with Pressure as well.
The worst example of that was Army of Darkness game.
I've never read that.
Right, it's a fun, fantastic game to play when you've got people in there in the zone. But reading that rulebook, it is torture. Mm-hmm. All right, screwheads, and it tries to do that sort of.
Yeah.
And it just beats. Even explain the rule. That's the way the language you use throughout. Which
it's weird that you should say that, because I avoided that when I first wrote my first draft of Those Dark Places. There was a sequence in there where the guy is basically talking to you like you're an idiot. He's explaining the rules and blah, blah, blah. And a friend of mine came back to me and said, look, this is really cool. I like the way you're going with this, but that the narrator is rude to me. He talked to me like I'm an idiot, and nobody talks to me like that. And straight away, that's a turn off. You're literally talking to your viewer, or you're talking to your reader, or you're talking to the person that could potentially play your game, talking to them like they're an idiot. So all that got ripped out completely, and I completely rewrote entire sections of the game to completely avoid that. Because it's just frustrating. You don't want to be spoken to like that, even by a game. And now in Pressure, it's slightly different because you're being talked to by a drill instructor. So there are a couple of moments where you'll turn around and say, what do you think you're doing? Shoot your face, blah, blah, blah. But I put that at the very beginning, and that's gone very, very early on. And then the rest of it is just him explaining the situation to you. So to come back to the original points, the way that I do it is I kind of feel like I want to set the mood in the original game, so you know what you get into as far as the game's concerned. So the mood, the aesthetic, the feel of that, in your emotional involvement is set up by the rule book. So when I come to write the adventure, I don't write it in that kind of narrative, that kind of person speaking to you way. I write it as a report. So I'll put it with the details. I am a little bit flowery with the language, a little bit descriptive. I'll include a bit at the beginning where they're giving you the briefing, like somebody's talking to you. And then there's a situation. It's basically very conversational. So I like to think that I've already set the mood with the original game, and that's carried along into the adventure. So all I need to worry about is setting up the situation and actually just writing the adventure.
Cool. Yeah, because it's not an easy thing. It's a bit of a balancing act. It's
absolutely
too much one way or the other. You're.
Yeah, I think that's a failure. Maybe not a failure, but that's one of the reasons why I turned off games like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, because a lot of the adventures started to feel very samey. You are literally going into another dungeon to find another doohickey to punch another guy in the face, and it's like, oh my god, how many times do I need to do this?
Can you play anything apart from a fighter character? You're kind of on the sidelines.
Yeah, absolutely. But the thing is, I always play a fighter, and no matter what fantasy game it is, I'm gonna play a fighter. Don't care. I want a sword. I want a shield, and I want to punch things in the face.
Bash things, yep.
So there we go. That's all I want. That's because the way I see it, and this is maybe going off on a tangent, but I did warn you. When I play a character in any
Are you familiar with this channel at all?
When I play a game, I want to play a character, not a character that, because I can relate to any character, but I want to play something where I feel as though I'm looking at the world through their eyes. I want to experience the world through their eyes. The best way for me to do that is just to play a human fighter. I have played wizards, and I've played dragonkin, and like tieflings and that sort of stuff. But I have the most fun playing through the eyes of a human fighter. It's just a general person out in the wild, experiencing the world for the first time, and that's the way that I enjoy playing my games. I want to play a simple, basic character who then goes out into the world and then grows from that point onwards. I don't want to go into a game where my character's already developed. It's got 10 pages of backstory. As far as I'm concerned, they've literally just stepped out their front door. They're about to start adventuring, and that's when their story starts. If my character wants a personality, a background, and a history, it's because of the game and not in spite of it. So that's why I enjoy playing those kind of characters.
Yeah, because I don't want to learn all the place names of Kryn and the villages and cities and where you come from. Because that's too much. You know what I mean? That's way too much. Yeah, I just want to jump in and be that person.
That person, and unless it's pertinent to the adventure that you're playing, then or if it's conversation, just to get you a little bit of world building, just to get the vibe going, that's absolutely fine. But I say that most players can go into a game especially in one of my games, can go into a game quite confidently, having 30% knowledge of what the world's about, and then still have a good time because they're there to experience it and not to live it.
So how has that journey been? Because you're, like I said, you're playtesting Pressure at the moment, so you're working with different groups.
Yeah.
does the group that you're playing with give each, like, even though you run the same scenario, possibly, does it give each scenario a new flavor? Has it made you think? Like, how much does the group that you're playing with dictate how you view your own game? Have you been surprised? Have you, maybe thought about things of, a group's brought to the table? How's that journey been? Or have you found a consistency as well, between playing with different groups that, oh yeah, this is my game?
No, I mean, I take feedback where I can find it, and playing with.
But not even feedback, but just generally playing the game.
Playing with different groups is always a bonus, especially when you're designing your own game, because, like you just said, you're literally getting different sort of views towards it, or different ideas, and the way they interact with the game as well might be different. I could run exactly the same adventure for one group, and then the next group would do it in a completely different way, and there's no accounting for that. So when I write adventures, I kind of try to stick to my original concept. I'll only change it if it's a glaringly obvious problem, whilst I'm actually playing it or playtesting it. Because, I mean, again, you could playtest to the world ends. You could playtest that the cows come home and then settle in and then sort of move out again. The fact is, you can't account for everything. So, when you send the game out there for other groups to play on their own without you, they're going to play it differently. So there's no point in trying to account for every single situation that crops up. You just write what you can write, make sure it's as good as you can.
Oh yeah, but does that challenge the robustness? Is that test the robustness of the game that you've allowed for that? Yeah. And have you ever been like taken away from, oh, this isn't pressure anymore, this is something else? Or have you managed?
No. The thing is, the rules of pressure are so simple that I've managed to retain its flavour pretty much with every game that I've run through it. The game that I ran last week was the first ever public play of pressure. My other games have been sort of behind closed doors and private. And to be honest with you, I didn't actually play test it that much, because when I originally wrote Those Dark Places, I got it to a point where I was happy with it, and I play tested it a few times. And the rules were so simple that it was just easy to adapt if I had to. So when I came to write pressure, I was just building what I'd already written, and then just testing a few little aspects to see if they worked and how I wanted them to work. And then that was good enough for me, and then I moved on. So no, it is very different. And it also depends on the group that you play with. I've played with groups that are very, very light-hearted, which kind of sucks a bit of the atmosphere out of the game. I play with groups who are very, very, very serious and very, very focused.
But that's what I mean. Does that ever, that's bound to challenge, your perception of the game, the way just somebody coming from that aspect. No. And is that what you find out? Does my game allow for this? Is there a certain type of player has to play this game? Back to what you're saying, you can't please everybody and you can't create a game for all. In certain games, Vampires, a perfect example, has a certain type of player. Dungeons and Dragons has a certain type of player. Cthulhu has a certain type of player. There's crossover, but there's a reason why people gravitate to a particular game. Have you found that you've how best describe this? Sorry, it's an off-the-cuff question. I've not written down.
Still formulating an answer.
Have you found that you've written this for a particular type of gamer, and then when you're marketing it, you can say, well, this is, if you enjoy this is what you'll get from it. If you enjoy this, you'll probably not. And is it just as important as well to like go, this might not be for you if you're a lighthearted player, for example, this might not be for you. If you're a super serious player, this might not be for you. Has playtesting in different groups helped you form that narrative yourself about, because you can have in your own head what do you think this game is, but seeing how other people react to it helps you.
No, not 100%, because I find that the audience will find me and not the other way around. I'm not looking for a particular kind of player. I'm not looking for a particular kind of group or a particular kind of play style.
Oh yeah, but naturally, if you write a certain scenario, it's going to gravitate to a certain person. So what I'm asking is, encountering the players, does that help you to formulate, or identify the sort of player that would get the most out of the game, and maybe somebody that wouldn't? And it's almost as valuable to say somebody, well, if you're this sort of player, you might not enjoy this, so that you're not getting that somebody coming into your game with expectations and then they're completely deflated.
No. And to be honest with you, I've not made any kind of distinction, because I think that if I do go looking for a particular kind of player, or I try to write with a particular kind of player in mind, then we come back again to what we were saying earlier, is that I'm not writing for the game or for myself. I'm writing for a demographic. I'm not trying to attract as many players as possible. And I know for a fact that what I've written is quite niche, because it's based on 1970s and 1980s dark industrial science fiction. And you know what I mean? That doesn't have its own shelf on the DVD store. So it's I am looking for a specific kind of attitude, maybe a specific kind of expectation, but I don't think I'm looking for a specific kind of player, because once that, and I'll come back to some of my old adage, once that game's out there, people can do with it what they want. So I think when I write very specifically what I want from a game, and what I want from a game is sort of semi-serious, quite involved, and telling a good story. And if other people gravitate to that and enjoy that, then that's absolutely great. But I can't cater for people's tastes, and people's tastes change. So you could be playing Toon one day or Paranoia the next, and then a week later you watch Alien and think, do you know what, I could play a game like that. You know what I mean? And then next thing you know, you're moving on to something different. So no, I try not to focus too much on what people want, and I try to focus more on what I can provide, if that makes sense.
Oh, cool. Plus, sometimes you might have thought you had that, and then when people actually react to your game, you're like, oh, didn't realize I'd written. These are the sort of people that enjoy it the most.
Yeah, I do take certain reactions into consideration. The reason why,
give an example of somebody who hasn't enjoyed your game, for example, and why.
Well, I can give you one example, which is I alluded to earlier when I told you that Those Dark Places had been put out on the internet in 2009. And there was an online gaming group. I can't remember what they called themselves. I had to message them in the end to let them know that they made a mistake. And they obviously wanted to play Those Dark Places, but they didn't want to pay for it. So they downloaded it off the internet. But what they actually downloaded was my original playtest copy from 12 years previously. And they played it live on the internet and then talked about how crap it was. I had to send them a message and say, the reason why I didn't enjoy this, because it was an incomplete game, which was written 14 years ago, and it's not Those Dark Places. And so, because they were talking about how happy they were that they downloaded it for free, basically tried to pirate it without having to pay for it so they could play it. And then I don't think they've put another video up since.
Yeah, because you kind of make yourself look like a fool.
That was really frustrating. There are people that didn't like it, and I get that, and I really, really do. I read a review recently. I don't usually read reviews, but for some strange reason, and can I just make a quick point? A lot of writers don't like reading reviews, whether they're positive or negative. So please don't email me or message me with a link to a review, whether it's good or bad, please. Somebody sent me a link to a review and said, oh, have you read this? And it was a really bad review of Those Dark Places. And I'm like, why do you want me to read that? So, and that's really frustrating.
But I think that's back to what we're talking about, the edgelord, the counterculture. Notice me, it's I don't have the personality to reach out to you and say, hi Jonathan, I'm Colin, pleased to meet you, let's talk. They don't have the confidence to do that, so they try and do it another way. And
and that's fine. But as far as people who don't like the game, as long as it's constructive criticism, I haven't got a problem.
Yeah, but that's you know what I mean. That's just
I didn't like this. I didn't like this because it was shit. It's no good to me. Or that sucks, lol. That's no good to me at all.
No, that's pathetic.
Even just putting 1-star review and then not leaving a remark, that doesn't help me in any aspect whatsoever. I'd rather you just didn't leave a review. Or I'd rather you leave a review 1 star and say I didn't like this because that works much better for me. And I get that. But today I think, to go off again on a tangent slightly, I think a lot of people who criticise stuff are doing it because I don't know, they want to be. I think some people are very critical and they do it in a very flowery way because to them being critical is entertainment, and they want people to take notice. But if they've got good points, that's absolutely fine. But if people don't like it because they don't like it, there's absolutely nothing I can do about that. I can't. You know what I mean?
When I review movies and stuff,
you know what I mean? Nothing I can do
it's
about it.
important to tell people why you don't like something.
Yeah, and that's absolutely fine.
And
but sometimes
also why you like something. It's important to go, oh, this is a great thing ever. It's not, you have to explain why the beats you liked, and the beats you don't. And
that's fine.
There's some daft movies I've watched and I've busted myself laughing, tearing them apart because they're just so ridiculous. But then I realized I can watch this movie again because I actually had fun. It was daft. I didn't.
There are crap films which are fun. Hawk the Slayer is one of my favourite films of all time because it's stupid, but it's so much fun. It's brilliant. It's absolutely fantastic. In fact, one of the things that I went for recently was that I wanted to write the role-playing game for Hawk the Slayer. I thought that'd be absolutely fantastic role-playing game. Synthwave soundtrack, 1980s magic film, absolutely fantastic. You couldn't say no. In the end, I did a comic with Henry Flint. I think Garth Ennis wrote it. Absolutely brilliant. But yeah, like I said, there's no accounting for taste. If somebody doesn't like something, there's absolutely nothing I can do about it. And like I said, if it's constructive feedback, it's fine. If you're trying to convince me that what I've written is crap because you didn't like it because of personal tastes, there's nothing I can do about that.
Yeah.
So there's absolutely
So,
no point in sharing.
I'll give an example maybe where I'm coming from. So I'm primarily a Cthulhu player.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't like Cthulhu because of the fragility of the PCs.
Yeah.
So they don't like the fact that one bullet or a brick to the back of the head, that's it, game over.
Yeah.
So they prefer the sort of super, like Vampire, where you know, when you get shot to bits.
Yeah.
All you have to do is go and bite a neck and you're back to normal again. Or, you know, that kind of thing. Or get a werewolf, you know, I was like to play Get a Fenris. Once again, back to my wargaming days, that was that mentality I brought across.
Yeah.
So if you're primarily a vampire or werewolf player and you use that supernatural, I can get stabbed unless it's with silver, you know, 100 times and still be walking, you're not going to like Call of Cthulhu because one brick to the head and it's over.
Yeah. That's true.
Is that similar to what maybe if somebody's expecting that thing of the supernatural, they're not going to like your game? Or they're not going to enjoy playing it?
But on the flip side, that's what draws me to Call of Cthulhu, is the fact that it is a dangerous
game. And that's what I mean. It's a valid, you know...
It's a valid point. But again, we're coming back to personal taste. They don't like it because they can die immediately, and that's not the kind of game they want to play. And I'm sorry about that.
And that's like I said,
change it. If you don't like it, change it. Add some extra wounds, reduce the damage of the gun. You know, if you still want to play in that game, but you don't like
have serums,
then
it's a sci-fi game. Have serums or cybernetic augmentation.
Yeah, absolutely. I've added that into Pressure. There's a whole page of cybernetics to make your life a little bit easier. You know what I mean? If you're having trouble, here we go. It's a page of cybernetics.
Actually, something fascinating you were talking about in Pressure. The shipbuilding. I really like your idea of it's almost like orcs, you know, just things get built together. There's no fleets of ships.
No, there's no production.
It's a bit like I know people slag this movie off, but I actually quite enjoyed it. Do you remember Waterworld?
Yeah, I like Waterworld. Yeah.
That was like Mad Max and Sea, you know. But I sort of instantly, the minute you were talking about ships and how they're built, I thought Waterworld of, you know, there's no fleets of navies. No. It's just whatever people can cobble together with.
Yeah,
and get it to work.
If you look at the shipbuilding industry now, there are some ships which are very similar, but in general, ships are completely different. They're built in different yards, built in different ways, built by different people, designed differently, and that's the way it is in my game. In Pressure, the ships, it's all based on volume. How big is your ship? What does it look like? There is no standard, and that's why I've included one example called the SSV Magellan, I think it is. It gives you one example of a ship, but I've not given any more examples because the system, you can just build your own. They're all vastly different. I am working on a little starship recognition manual of about a dozen ships, which you can just use in the game.
So give them classes as such.
Absolutely,
you know,
So you can
what's
just
a tugboat, what's a freighter, what's a cruise liner.
So it's an example of each ship basically. So you can just grab it if you need it. I'm hoping to get that written up. I'll probably give it away for free, to be fair. But I might just give it away like I did with the last game. And that'd be nice.
Have you thought about bundles?
Sorry?
Have you thought about maybe bundles?
I have with my own games. Osprey take care of everything else with Pressure and those dark places.
Yeah, maybe sell a bundle, as in, you know, here's a core game and here's a bunch of this.
And take all of this. But the games that I write, even though they're technically officially those dark places, or they're also compatible with Pressure adventures, I'm releasing them through Farsight Games. It's not done through Osprey. Osprey are more interested in getting the core books out and then maybe giving a bit of support if it's there. But because I'm doing the support myself, then they're absolutely fine for me to carry on and doing that, and they'll help push it as well. But if you can get the adventures through Farsight Games, they are official adventures using the same sort of format.
Links in the description, folks, by the way.
Hooray! There we go. It's my plug for the evening. That's my job done. But I think I'd rather do that as well, because then I can release adventures on my own time and under my own pace. Because my initial intention was to release one adventure every 2 months, and then I'd written the first adventure, and without wanting to put too fine a point in it, it was a bit crap. And I'd literally just rushed it because I thought I've given myself a 2 month time limit, and that's where I'm going to get it done by. I'll have it finished, written by 15th February, and release it the 1st of March. And it just wasn't very good. I went back and completely rewrote it. It took me 3 months in total just to make it work properly for me. So that went out the window straight away. So I'd rather support the games on my own terms through Farsight Games, and that way then people will know that they're getting some kind of support. But this comes back to the community thing. I encourage people to share their designs and their builds and their adventures, and just put them out there. And you know what I mean. And just so that other players can use them as they see fit. Just share what you've created, and that's what makes the community great. I think the fact that we've got the ability now with the internet to share what we create ourselves. Go ahead and do it. That's absolutely, absolutely spot on if people can do that. Help build the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
the foundations. Everybody else can help build it.
I'm a believer in time spent creating is not time wasted.
Never.
So just because you're not selling something, you're practicing and you're honing your craft. So you may be creating a companion for another game for free and supporting somebody else, because there's this. I think it's a very American attitude as well of not everybody's out for themselves, and to forget that you can get as much fulfillment supporting somebody else, and eventually that will come back to you if it's the right group of people. Because people can tell short and a mile away, and that usually fall by the wayside. But if you're genuinely there and you've built up a reputation, you're supporting other games, and you've got a passion for it, when it comes time for yours, people are going to be more susceptible and interested in supporting you.
I mean,
it just happens naturally, believe it or not. If you're a community, it's
absolutely.
And a lot of people miss that point.
Names out there, and then they know you're good for it as well. You know what I mean? And you give support of your own, then that's grand. I mean, it also comes back as well to what you think that you're worth as a creator. I don't set the prices for the rule books of those Dark Places of Pressure. That's all, again, because I suppose the publisher, that's all up to them. But when I'm writing my adventures, I can't think what to charge people, and so I think I charge what I think I'm worth, and obviously because I'm more interested in the items getting out there than I am in making money out of it, because I'm not in the industry for that reason. Not yet, anyway. Let's face it. I charge quite low. So I mean, I designed a game recently called Deep Space. It's only 4 pages long. It's a complete deep space action adventure role-playing game, and I'm charging £1 for it because I'm thinking it didn't take me long to write it. You know what I mean? It took me a month or so to play test it, so I'm going to charge what I think it's worth. So I like to make things accessible for people.
I want people to building years of experience as well.
Absolutely, but
so,
I want.
If it was your first adventure, it wouldn't have taken you a month; it would have taken you a year. So that's you got to kind of factor that in too, because
absolutely, and people keep saying that.
I'm guilty of it with my books. I lowball them, and even the merchandise for the store, I keep the minimum percentage of I might make £1 on a T-shirt, but I'd rather 10 people had a T-shirt. And showing love for the podcast than me making 20 quid for one and going, here's in my pocket. Yeah, I'm
brilliant.
I'm just as guilty.
No, I can't do it. And going off on a slightly personal note, I suffer from. Let me just take a deep breath. I suffer from anxiety, which probably doesn't come across because I'm sort of quite vocal and I speak quite a lot and I laugh a lot. But I can guarantee after this is over, I'm going to go to sleep for about 5 days. And one of my parts of anxiety is what I said a moment ago is what am I worth? And I feel that if I put my product out there for more than I don't know £2 or £3, I think I'm pushing the boat out by charging like £5 for Fireteam, the complete role playing game. I think I feel like I'm taking the piss, and I start to think then people aren't going to think it's worth it, and then slowly the price comes down over time.
Let's just say I have bought a scenario, 1 or 2 scenarios for another game.
Yeah,
I was thinking of running, and I was like £3 or £4 each. And when I read it, it was like 4 pages, and I was disgusted.
Can't do it. I can't do it.
I was absolutely disgusted because there was no effort. In fact, the notes I'd taken another Free League game, 0-0. So I was one to run out. I'd taken more notes on a scenario I was thinking about and old maps. To try and get that apocalyptic feel of, it's a bit of an old map, but no detail or no cities. It's all, I was getting that. I'd done more work on an idea I hadn't even put together than what some people were selling, like the proper taking the piss.
Yeah.
So there's people like that out there that have absolutely no compunction whatsoever.
No.
But when you're putting the effort in and actually creating the world and the game, you shouldn't sell yourself short.
Yeah, and that's true. But at the same time as well,
I think it's about having the right people around you as well that aren't afraid to say to you, Jonathan, you're worth more than that, mate. Don't sell yourself short. Plus, if this is what you want to do full time, you have to also think, I got to price accordingly. Because
And I think that's
the bills don't change. People forget that. The amount what it costs to live doesn't change. In fact, it gets worse.
That's
So
why
you gotta.
But then I'm back to my brain overthinking it and thinking one of two things. One, I'm writing about what I'm enjoying. Why would anybody be interested in what I'm enjoying? Which is a weird.
We've just talked about that. We've seen people that write about what they don't enjoy and hate. Like,
I know.
look at people who come into, like, the studios have come into the nerd sphere.
Yeah.
And they absolutely, and they're the sort of secondary school, high school kids, the ones that hated nerds and would try and beat you up.
Yeah.
And they're the ones writing the content at the moment that absolutely despise you.
Yeah.
And it comes across, and that's why everything, look at everything else is falling apart. Like,
they're
they're spending 300 odd million on a movie and it's like tanking, and they're doing this consistently because they don't have the right attitude. And what people are craving for right now are passionate folks that actually love what they do.
And that's what, and that's what.
So you're providing something more valuable.
Yeah, I know, but that's not the way I see it. The fact is, I've been doing this shit since.
Well, I'm telling you now, get it sorted.
I'll be, thanks very much. I'll do it now. Bought by a tenner.
Yes, I would pay. You know what I mean? I have done that. I'm happily.
Yeah.
As long as I don't feel like I'm being, like I said, I know when I'm getting the piss taken out of me.
Yeah, and that's the second thing is the fact that I don't think I'm important enough to earn to deserve that level of to charge that much for my games. I'm just a small fish.
Well, I know 3 channels so far that completely disagree, and I'm counting myself as a 4th.
Yeah,
because everyone that's played, in fact, that's why you've ended up here, is because people going, you gotta speak to Jonathan. He's great.
So that
and that's
night has gone up by about 3 or 4 notches now.
And you can't buy that.
Shit, man, you got to deliver.
No, and that's that's always an internal battle of your creator anyway. I'm the same here. Gotta deliver, gotta be. And then you realize you gotta let that go, because that's not why people love what you do.
Careful, Colin. This is turning into a therapy session.
We do all sorts. It's all part of the service here.
Welcome to the HORRORific therapy channel.
Therapy channel, yeah. Horrific therapies. Leave people more broken than when they come in.
I'm gonna go home now and cry.
No, but honestly, you've already built it, but you have people that genuinely appreciate what you do. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with, and this is what I tell creators, because so many people, once again, don't apologize for what you do.
Yeah,
no. That's the trap. The minute you start apologizing for what you do, then you actually destroy yourself, because then you stop writing what you love, and then your audience who loved you for what you write then get something different.
The thing is, a lot of the time, I'm quite able to put that out of my head. When I'm actually physically writing and actually sitting down and creating, then that's out of my head, and I'm focusing on what I love.
Yeah, the passion, and that's.
But when I'm laying it out and I'm getting ready for publication, that's when all that sort of kicks in. And I can guarantee that every single thing that I write, especially the adventures for Those Dark Places, they all started out at a price of about $8.99. And then the more I laid it out and the more I set it up on Drive-Thru RPG, the price went down a bit by bit by bit by bit. And by the time I actually clicked on publish, it was down to $2.99.
Nah,
so, you know what I mean? And I'm like, what? And then I'm sat there in my chair thinking, what have you just done, Jonathan? What are you doing? You can't make a living that way. But,
no, and especially that's the transition then.
Yeah, and if people love it, then that's more than enough. And I know there's probably a conceited thing to say, hey, if people enjoy it, that's a bonus. But to be honest with you, with me, it kind of is, because that's the way my mind works. So
yeah, if you're a creator, you want the and you mentioned narcissism, but there's a difference between just wanting adulation for the sake of it and craftsmanship, where you actually, you're an artisan, you actually want to build something, and then that adulation comes from what you build, not just, here, I'm Jonathan, look at me, I'm fucking fantastic, bow down before me. That's that attitude. Look at Zack Snyder. There's an example of an idiot who has that sort of attitude.
I'm not interested in any kind of celebrity status, but like you just said earlier, I'm not looking for adulation. I think what I'm looking for is probably appreciation, maybe.
Yeah, of the time and
maybe I'm looking for validation. Maybe I'm looking for people to turn around to me and say, actually, I really enjoy your stuff, and that makes me feel like, well, it was fucking worth it then, wasn't it? I think that's what I'm. Actually, no, that's probably is what I'm looking for.
You've put time and effort into something.
I enjoyed that, and that's more than enough for me. Off I go.
And it's not this, and this is what a lot of creators forget as well. It's not the 6 months or the month you've spent on current project. It's the 20 years you've spent getting to that point.
Yeah.
And a lot of people forget that. They only think of the next thing. Oh, it took me so long. But no,
Yeah.
you spent 30 years getting to that point where you're writing these things consistently.
No, it's true. I mean, I started out quite early, and then sort of started to learn my craft. Then I almost dropped out of it because back in 2006 I wrote the computer game for Battlestar Galactica, a mobile phone game, and my experience with that was so soul crushing that I almost just wanted to leave it behind completely. It got published, it did okay, and but the experience wasn't great. So, and then after that, I basically just started to rebuild, and then, like you say, since about 2007 onwards, I've just focused on just getting better and better, getting as good as I can. I don't think I'm the best. I certainly don't think I'm up there in the top % because there's creators out there who've been doing this for a lot longer than I have, who are just phenomenally good, and even I aspire to be like. All I can do is my very best, and that's when the anxiety kicks in, and that's when I start charging too little for my stuff.
No, that's what that's where I think you need somebody to level you. That's where you have to have the right people.
No, I didn't manage.
Not sycophants. You know, and the worst thing to do is get a wee group of sycophants, but you need that person that's going to go.
Yeah, I need feedback. I need people to be honest. I need people to say, actually, yeah, John, that was quite cool, but have you considered this, or that was a bit naff, or that didn't work. I don't want to live in a bubble. I think that's another thing as well. I don't live in this little sort of self-contained bubble
that's the part
of my own mind. I need that feedback. I need that appreciation and validation as a creator. Otherwise, there's no point in me doing it. Otherwise.
Yeah, I suppose. Last whole thing, just before we wrap up, because I don't want to keep you here forever. You'll be like, never let me go.
We went off then on a completely different sort of direction.
That's what we do here. That's what.
Yeah, but it's taking me.
That's why it's called chat, not interview.
Yeah. But to be honest with you, it feels good because it's taken me a while to live up to and face up to my anxiety, and I was suffering from it quite badly over the last few years, thanks to a shitty day job that I had. But it really helps to chat about it. So there's another thing from this out there. If you do have these kind of feelings, if you do sort of feel as though you need to communicate or you're having difficulty, just chat to somebody, just sit down and have a conversation. Because you'll be amazed how much better you feel when you realise or you face the situation that you think you're in. So that's the end of the therapy session. Sorry, crack on.
Yeah, it's a running theme of this show. Anyone that's here understands it's going to go any direction. You might be an initial theme, but nah. No, just last wee thing. There's a phenomenon that's, and I'm quite dubious about it, but other people are saying it's brilliant. This whole thing of paid GMs.
Of what? Sorry.
Paid GMs. GMs are basically run games to get paid to run games.
Okay.
Have you become familiar with that?
No, that's the first.
It's only popped up recently. There's actually people out there.
I try to avoid a lot of role-playing discourse, to be honest with you, because a lot of it just turns into factionalism and arguing. So I try to stay out of it.
Well, you're lucky. I was having this other chat a couple of nights ago, and little microcosm I'm part of is a fantastic community of people.
Yeah.
But that's not. I keep reminding them this is a small group. If you look at the wider, don't forget I've been there in the 90s. We've all got that. That 10,000 yard stir of vampire players. We've all been there. You get that twitch.
Oh mate,
but yeah. There's this thing coming up.
Maybe that's where my anxiety came from. Yeah.
Yeah, you played vampire. That's it.
Yeah, I'm bugged since the 90s. Yeah.
We've all been there. But this whole idea of people, charging to run games, it might sound great, or it might seem like a good way to run an income, but I just don't see it going down a good path. I have concerns about it. And obviously this is new to you, so maybe you don't have any.
I don't have any direct experience. I have sort of heard about it, but I've not really seen adverts or people talk about it. I kind of understand it in a way. If you're paying somebody to literally spend all their free time to create just for you and your mates, you know what I mean, so that you don't have to do any of the work. But then it's different for me because that's just the way I grew up. That's just what I was doing in the 80s and 90s.
And it's almost players, GMs need players need GMs. It's a collaborative effort.
Yeah.
And I don't see it going down a good path because once money gets involved in that way, then competition gets involved, and then it's when you get to a certain level, like look at YouTube's a good example. When you get to a certain level, and then just because you're achieving something, somebody wants to take you down because they see it as competition.
Mhm.
And I'm worried. And it's this whole thing when something becomes mainstream, role playing's become more mainstream, and then that mainstream attitude comes in. And we've seen so many franchises and genres destroyed because of it.
Mm.
Is there a danger, or am I just being paranoid?
I don't think
I'm trying to think ahead of where it could lead and urge caution, or is it just me being not getting with the times?
I think it's literally. I think in this particular case, I don't think you're being paranoid. I understand where you're coming from, but I think in this particular case, it's definitely a kind of horses for courses thing. If you as a group want to club together and pay somebody to come and run a game for you, then that's your lookout. And if somebody's good enough as a GM to make a living out of it or make some pocket money out of it, then guys, sort of knock yourself out. I think personally, I just find it a little bit strange because, like, if somebody had said that to me 30 years ago, hey, give me £5 to run a game of Mutant Chronicles for you.
Well, give me £10 to play in your game because I'm a fantastic role player. That's the direction I'm seeing it going.
Yeah, right. And I don't see it. I'd never charge for. I'd charge for the games that I write, but I'd never charge for running a game. That to me, that's like going around to mates' house saying, I've got Monopoly, so we do all want to play, but it's my game board, so everybody give me a £5 and then we can play Monopoly tonight. That's what it kind of feels like. Yeah. But again, it's horses for courses. There might be some seriously good guys out there who are spending like 80 hours a week building these amazingly intricate campaigns and stories. And people are more than willing to pay the money for it, then who are we to say no? But it's
so what's and I can see the flip side because it's cause out there, and we all want to show appreciation to somebody who's taking the time and effort.
Yeah.
What's a good way to do it then? If the person isn't publishing their own games, or have a product, I try obviously plugging and sharing stuff around and doing it that way. But what's a good way then for players to go if they want to do that? How do they show appreciation
to the GM? Just turn up for the next game. That's all you need to do. If you turn up for the next game and you just say thank you, I enjoyed that's usually more than enough. That's all the GM wants to hear. From personal experience, when I create campaigns, I don't create them just to run through a couple of times to see how I'm getting on. I want that game to continue for very particular reasons. And if I don't get that feedback, again, if I don't get that sort of vindication, if those players aren't turning to me and saying, I really enjoyed that, see you next week, or if they don't turn up the next week for whatever reason, then to me, that's a failure. And if you want to show appreciation to a GM, one, don't bring chewy sweets to the table because nobody wants to ask you what your action's going to be while you've got a gob full of coffee. What are you talking about? Spit it out, say it properly. Just don't do that. And don't drink loads of alcohol because that's just embarrassing for everybody. Unless that's the kind of game it is, of course. But just say thank you. Just say thank you and then come back next week. There's nothing better for a GM to hear that they appreciated the game, that they enjoyed the game. And then to also, and this has happened to me recently. They've enjoyed the game, and we've got like a little sort of message chat group, so we can arrange the next meetup. Because I'm doing a face-to-face game at the moment, and they were chatting about the game and what they're going to do next, and talking to each other about the characters and blah blah blah. That's brilliant. You're thinking about my game outside of the game, about what's going to happen next.
Yeah,
that's all I want to hear. That gives me a sense of such solid satisfaction that not only has what I created been entertaining, but I've actually done something right. And the majority of you who enjoyed it at that particular time, that's for me, that's more than enough. So yeah, if you want to show your appreciation to your GM or DM or referee or game mother,
director, 100 names, it's a state.
If you want to show appreciation to the person that runs your game, just say thank you. I really enjoyed that. I look forward to seeing you next week, and then turn up for the next game. That's all you need to do. A lot of the time, that's more than enough.
And don't be that guy.
Oh yeah, and don't be that guy because nobody likes it. So
nobody likes that guy.
Like I say, I've got some horror stories that I could tell you, especially about vampire, but I don't want to embarrass anybody, especially myself.
This would be a 6-hour podcast.
So, yeah. So keep your next Sunday free, and maybe we'll have a couple of hours. But
So most importantly, what's next in the horizon then? What's down the pipeline?
I want to do more for my game, Deep Space. That's been quite successful. That's been described as Alistair McLean in space. It's basically like a Cold War adventure game, which I've written the rule book for, 8 adventures, 3 source books, and 3 supplements. but they're all like 4 pages, 2 pages, one. You know what I mean? They're all really short, £1 each. I want to do some more with that. I'm thinking about expanding it and maybe going into print. I am working on 2 projects at the moment, both of which I can't talk about because one's a license agreement, which I can't talk about, and I've got an NDA on the go. Which
Sure,
I'm
you'll
really,
give us an update closer to the
you'll
time,
know as soon as I'm given the green light to talk about it. I can guarantee I'm going to be screaming about it at the top of my lungs. And then the second one is a in progress game, and that's pretty much about it. So hopefully you'll hear about the 2 big projects by February, March of next year. Although one's delayed, I'm still waiting to hear back from 2 other projects which have been completed. Again, which I can't talk about. That's really, I know that's really bad. Actually, it's almost like I'm looking for attention.
No, but it's a work of, you know what I mean. You can't jump the gun if these things are in place.
Yeah, I've got to be quiet about it. But I'm very excited about them anyway. I'm also working on a new fantasy game called The Doom of Ages, which I'm hoping will be Farsight Games' first actually proper physical published product, which I'm going to be taking to conventions with me next year. But at the moment, the time scale on that is a little bit skewy. I've managed to secure an artist, a guy called Hodag RPG. He's done work for all kinds of different things. He's like an old school black and white ink artist, and I love him. He's really, really good. So I'm hoping to work with him next year, and that's pretty much it. And then, of course, support for Pressure. The next adventures I'm going to write are going to be specifically for Pressure, and I'm hoping to build on the world and the setting that I've already created. So that's my plans for next year. I'm all planned out until April of next year, and then I'll just see where I go from there.
All right, fantastic, Jonathan. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
I really enjoyed it, Colin. Thank you very much.
Good to have a chat, and love the tangents. That's what we're all about here.
Yeah, no, really enjoyed it. It's really, really good. I have to do it again. So
there you go, folks. Obviously, keep up to date with Jonathan. His links are in the description. Check out his Twitter feed. Somebody pick up Hicks. I'll be doing that, just having a laugh.
I'll talk about everything and anything.
Yeah, and that's what we love. But yeah, check out Jonathan's work. Obviously, as we get more information, obviously keep an update. Have you back on? Maybe play a game or something. We could see how to go there.
That'd be great.
Absolutely love that. But folks, everyone in the chat and all, thanks for joining in. And just as we say, keep up to date with the channel, do the heavy clicky things, and until next time, keep it creepy, keep it horrific.
Thank you very much.